Autumn's first chill swept across the north like a wandering ghost, brushing icy fingers through the red leaves of the weirwoods and rattling the wooden shingles atop Winterfell's towers. On the battlements, torches flickered in the growing dusk, their flames dancing in defiance of the wind. Robb Stark, king in the north still despite the wounds of betrayal, leaned on the rough-hewn stone and watched his ancestral land settle beneath the oncoming night. The faintest breath of snow drifted on the breeze, not yet a storm, but a promise of the long winter ahead. He felt the rising bite in the air and welcomed it, for the starkness cleared his mind of unanswered questions and half-remembered grief. He should have died at the Twins. The phrase came unbidden every time the darkness lengthened and the silence between footfalls grew. He should have died like his bannerman, like his mother, like gray wind, an ambush of quarrels and treachery, a song of steel and screaming hearts. Had it not been for the quick thinking of Mage Mormont's retainers, the last of the northern rearguard, and the sheer savagery with which his own desperation had turned to fury, he would have lain butchered beside plates of half-eaten trout. Instead, he'd been dragged out half-conscious beneath a curtain of arrows, saved by those who still believed House Stark was worth bleeding for. When the Freys found only battered shields and broken corpses, where their true prize had fled, the direwolf lived on in rumor. Now Robb grappled with a different war, one fought with whispers and alliances rather than charges of horse and the thunder of drums. The north bled, yet survived. The Riverlands groaned under the yoke of wolves and lions alike. And everywhere, the fragile order of the Seven Kingdoms teetered on the edge of ruin. He could smell the fear of common folk drifting through the markets, hear it in the crack of laughter that broke too sharply, see it in the flicker of torches that guttered whenever a cold wind whistled around corners. Footsteps echoed along the battlements, measured, deliberate. Robb turned to find Jon Snow emerging from the stairwell, black cloak rippling like a living shadow. His half-brother's face had grown gaunt since his return from the wall, pale beneath the torchlight but steadfast as weathered stone. A faint sheen of frost clung to Jon's dark hair, sparkling like a thin halo. "You sent for me," Jon said, voice low enough that the wind almost stole it away. Robb nodded. "I needed your counsel, and your oath. Anything." No hesitation, not from Jon. The promise lay between them as plainly as the armaments hung in Winterfell's forge. Robb studied him. "Tell me, do you still dream of the wall? Of your vows?" Jon's brow tightened. Too young a face for such weariness. "I was released from them, as you well know. Stannis offered me Winterfell and I refused. But the wall remembers, even if I try to forget. That memory is why I need you," Robb said. "The north is not enough. We cannot stand alone against Lannister gold, Greyjoy reavers, and the cold itself." His gaze swept south, through stone and distance. In his mind he saw the endless leagues to Highgarden, blooming under golden sunlight. "An offer has reached my hall, an alliance sealed not by parchment, but by marriage. House Tyrell extends a hand." Jon looked out across the darkening world, saying nothing. Robb pressed on. "Margaery Tyrell. She is keen of wit, beloved by her people, and her grandmother claims she carries the summer with her wherever she walks. The match was first suggested for Renly Baratheon, then for Joffrey, and dragons know whom else. But Olenna Tyrell is nothing if not patient. She seeks a king who will cherish her rose, and Highgarden seeks to survive amid the vultures. Then the Nawa. And you think I should wed her?" Jon's words were nearly inaudible, but the breeze carried them all the same. "You are my brother in all but name," Robb said. "The crown of the north sits uneasy on my brow. I will need you at my side, commander, counselor, equal. Our blood may be different, but the bonds are not. Marrying Margaery would tie our fate to the Reach's harvests and coin. Grain for steel, soldiers for honor, summer for winter. Summer for winter." Jon's breath escaped in a pale plume. "I was born a bastard." "You were born a Stark," Robb corrected, voice tightening. "And if I declare it, the banners will echo me." The phrase butchered the loyalty we offered in good faith. Let the world see that House Stark does not falter twice. Jon's eyes, the gray of storm clouds brewing over the shivering sea, did not waver. What of her? What of Margaery's say in this? She knows duty. Robb's tone softened. Olenna spoke highly of you. She claimed the North's half-wolf carried a quiet nobility the South would follow. It seems your gravity precedes you. Namdaro. A raven circled overhead, wings slicing the gloom, before it vanished into shadows pooled beneath the battlements. Jon followed its path as though it bore an omen only he could read. And if I refuse, then I will ride south alone, Robb answered simply, and bleed Winterfell white to hold the North until every sparrow and thrush forgets what spring once felt like. I would not force your hand, but I pray you understand how desperately we need the Reach. The torch between them hissed as a snowflake landed on molten pitch. Jon's shoulders rose and fell beneath his cloak. I will meet her, he said at last. I will hear her words before I give mine. Relief flooded Robb like warmth after frostbite. But he knew better than to smile. Victory too easily slipped away in this world. Instead, he laid a leather-gloved hand on Jon's arm. We ride on the morrow then. I'll send ravens this night. Jon inclined his head, the ghost of a bow, and was gone, cloak trailing like a living shadow swallowed by fresh snowfall. Enderau. They set out at dawn, a lean column of horsemen flanked by outriders and followed by wagons laden with provisions. The King's Road stretched south, a gray ribbon cutting through forests of pine and beech. Each hoofbeat whispered of destiny. Rubble from sporadic skirmishes still littered the roadside, broken lances jutting from frozen mud, banners torn to ragged streamers caught on thorn. Yet the further they rode, the softer the winter breath became, until frost gave way to dew and the scent of wet earth. By the time they crossed the neck under the watchful eyes of Crannogman, the chill had eased into an early spring warmth. Frogs chirred in the reeds, and pale pink blossoms adorned the branches above. Jon rode near the van, long claws sheathed across his back. The direwolf ghost padded ahead, white fur stark against dark turf, an eerie sentinel that made small folk drop their tools and stare. It was at Moat Cailin, beneath the shadow of toppled walls, that Robb first addressed his gathered captains. They assembled amidst moss-covered stones, the morning sun seeping through mist that clung like ghosts of old kings. Roderick Castle stood with his arm bound in new-sewn mail. Maege Mormont, broad-shouldered and scarred, leaned on a spear half again her height. Galbart Glover, who had replaced his brother's broken sigil with one unscarred, listened intently beside great Jon Umber, who was already growling at the notion of parley with southern lords. My friends, Robb began, voice carrying across ancient ruin, we have fought battles and bled for a North free of chains. Yet we cannot savor victory while our people starve beneath snowdrifts. A king who rules empty fields is no king, only a lord of graves. The Reach holds bread enough for armies and sons enough to stand beside ours. We go not to bend the knee, but to clasp hands. The great Jon spat in the mud. The Tyrells are flowers. Roses wilt in winter. And the last time a wolf roamed south of the neck, Walder Frey pruned him. Glover muttered. Robb met each man's skeptical gaze. This time we choose our allies as we choose our swords, carefully and keen-edged. He nodded to Jon. The Reacher alliance will be forged through a bond stronger than iron. Eyes shifted to Jon, some curious, some dubious. He bore their scrutiny in silence. No banners flapped for him, no songs praised his name. Yet the weight of his quiet presence stilled even the great Jon's tongue. Ghost prowled close, crimson eyes gleaming. Maege Mormont spoke first. A bride for the bastard of Winterfell. Her words carried no disdain, merely tasted aloud the strangeness. I'll wager the South will call it scandal. Let them, Robb replied. We will call it rebirth. The meeting dissolved into logistics. Ravens, supply wagons, scouts riding ahead with silver brooches of the direwolf and rose. Before noon the host moved again, slipping through the green throat of Westeros. Gossip spread along the column like wildfire. The king in the north sought peace of a kind not sealed since the days of Aegon the Conqueror. And his half-brother, bastard no longer, some whispered, would wed the thorn-crowned maid of Highgarden. Jon kept his counsel, listening to the hush of leaves overhead. He wondered what Margaery Tyrell made of this arrangement, what hopes she harbored in her cedar-scented chambers. Rumor painted her clever and kind, but rumor also painted Robb unkillable once, and Ned Stark unshakable, and both portraits had cracked beneath reality's hammer. The true question, the question that gnawed his quiet hours, was whether a union of rose and wolf could blossom amid the ashes of war. Highgarden's first impression was scent. Fields of sweet alyssum, lavender, and the heady musk of ripened fruit carried on warm breezes. The castle itself rose from verdant terraces, a living tapestry of marble colonnades, intertwined with climbing roses. Gold and green banners stirred lazily above sunlit battlements, their silk whispering promises of summer eternal. Robb's column approached through avenues lined with apple trees heavy with blossom, escorted now by reach knights in burnished steel. Birds trilled from leafy bowers overhead, and the very air felt softer, luxurious, almost decadent after the austere tang of pine and snow. A chorus of courtiers gathered before the castle gate, colorful as a flock of exotic birds. At their head stood Lady Olenna Tyrell, wrinkles etched around incisive eyes like delicate calligraphy, clad in moss-green silks and a starched bonnet adorned with a single white rose. Beside her, Mace Tyrell puffed himself to grand proportions, proud father and lord of the Reach. But when Jon dismounted, it was neither of the elder Tyrells whose attention riveted him. It was the young woman at their center. Margaery Tyrell possessed a grace that seemed woven from sunlight and breeze. Dark curls framed a face both bright and thoughtful. Smile gentle yet edged with curiosity. She wore a gown of pale green that shifted like willow leaves beneath water, and a thin circlet of golden roses rested upon her brow. Robb approached first, cloak of gray and white swirling behind him, sword of winter steel at his side. He knelt before Olenna with the deference owed a matriarch of such cunning. Mace bowed his head in return, though he never ceased beaming at the assemblage. Then Jon stepped forward. The courtyard silenced, anticipation pooling like water around roots. Jon bowed, not stiff nor shy, but with the deliberate respect of a man who had stood before kings both living and dead. When he straightened, his eyes met Margaery's. Storm cloud gray and summer sky blue collided. "My lady," he said. "Sir Jon." She caught herself, uncertain of his proper title. "Lord Snow." "Jon Stark," Robb supplied, voice lifting across the courtyard. "It was not a question. He's my brother, and my chosen heir until such time as I have sons of my own." A murmur rippled through the gathered reachlords. Margaery's smile blossomed anew, as if she alone saw the poetry and titles shed and forged anew. "It is an honor, Lord Stark," she said, dipping into a curtsy so fluid it might have been rehearsed for days or improvised in that heartbeat. Either way, it shimmered with sincerity. "I hope Highgarden's warmth proves a welcome change after winter's chill." "Your gardens could thaw even the wall," Jon answered, surprising himself. The words seemed to please her, though they drew stares from lords unused to hearing the wall praised in matters of courtship. Olenna cleared her throat sharply. "Ah, to be young and drowning in metaphor. Come, children, let us exchange pleasantries somewhere shaded. Sunstroke does unkind things to good sense." And negotiations unfolded within the lady's garden, amid fragrant lemon trees and the hum of bees. Olenna played her game with brisk ruthlessness, flicking aside Mace's florid compliments whenever he threatened to speak too long. Robb met her parry for thrust, but it was Jon and Margaery whose quiet glances shaped each compromise. Wealth in grain for the north, timber for the Reach shipyards, marriage within the moon's turn, subject to the blessing of the faith. One afternoon, Jon found himself wandering spiral paths with Margaery, while septons haggled over wedding rites in distant chambers. The hedge maze swallowed courtly prattle. Only the rustle of leaves accompanied them, and the faintest drone of insects. "I feared you would be stern and silent," Margaery said, voice light as petals drifting onto water. "I am both, often," Jon admitted, "but silence obscures little among roses." He reached to finger a bloom. thorns hidden beneath soft flesh. I've heard tales of Tyrell courtesy since I was a boy, and I have heard tales of northern honor since I was a girl, she replied. They always end with snow, and wolves, and grave eyes that see through lies. They forget the forests, Jon said, and the laughter around hearths, and the summer that lives even in Winterfell when the harvest is strong. That summer must be worth guarding then. She tilted her head, studying him. Will you guard it if I join you in that cold realm? He considered the question. Guarding Winterfell meant more than stone walls. It meant shielding innocence, sparing hearths from the storm's first bite. I will guard all that is entrusted to me, he said. Including you, if you wish it. Her smile softened at the edges, eyes bright. Then winter may not frighten me as much as I feared. They walked on, conversation weaving between them like a delicate loom. Stories of Highgarden's tourneys, of direwolves chasing fireflies at dusk. Memories of half-remembered mothers, Catelyn's stern gentleness, Margaery's own mother lost to fever. They spoke of Stannis dragons made of painted wood, and of Renly's golden cloak flashing at dawn. Of Samwell Tarly's absent presence in Margaery's childhood stories, and of Arya Stark's vanished, laughter echoing through Jon's dreams. Rain threatened only once, a scattering of droplets that glittered on rose petals before the clouds passed. Throughout, the strange tension of arranged union melted into something softer. Part admiration, part understanding. Each recognized scars upon the other, though unspoken. Yow. The betrothal feast outshone any gathering Highgarden had hosted in a generation. Tables groaned beneath wheels of summer cheese. Honey-glazed quail, and towers of sugared apples carved into the likeness of wolves and rind. Musicians played upon lutes and high harps, while dancers traced complicated steps across inlaid marble floors. The air teemed with crushed herbs, spiced wine, and the murmur of deals sealed in alcoves. Robb raised a goblet, steel circlet glinting beneath chandeliers wrought like flowering vines. Tonight, we drink to a future free of fear, he declared. North and South stand together, strength in root and branch. May our children know only the songs of peace. Bemdamau. Cheers rang off vaulted ceilings, robust and genuine from northern throats, melodic and lilting from the Reach. Mace Tyrell proclaimed that roses would bloom even through snowdrifts once Stark blood joined their soil. The great Jon roared for another cask of Arbor Gold. Olenna rolled her eyes but permitted the indulgence. Jon sat beside Margaery at the high table, Ghost lying at his feet. He felt more exposed than upon the wall's icy precipice, yet Margaery's presence steadied him. She prompted him to taste a honeycake shaped like a direwolf pup. He prompted her to sample goat's cheese from the Vale that one of Robb's knights had brought as tribute. Laughter came easier with each shared bite. By night's end, as candles guttered low, Robb found Jon at the garden's edge, staring at moonlight spilled across reflective pools. Music drifted soft and distant. Shadows of dancers twirled like memories behind stained glass windows. Cold feet? Robb asked. My feet have never been warmer, Jon said, gaze fixed on rippling water. He hesitated, then faced his brother. She is more than I expected. I fear failing her more than I fear this war. Robb clasped Jon's shoulder. Then you will not fail. Fear can carve our path as surely as duty. Together we will hold the north, and the Reach shall feed the realm through winter. The Lannisters cannot starve us, Greyjoys cannot burn us, and Freys cannot drown us in their treachery. We will become something new. Something new. Jon tasted the words. Not a bastard, not a crow, but a lord with a rose-clad bride, and a destiny beyond the wall's shadow. He did not know if he deserved it, but he would answer its call all the same. Indishi. Eal. News of the alliance spread like wildfire up the King's Road. In taverns, minstrels sang of the wolf and the rose, of summer's kiss upon winter's brow. At King's Landing, Cersei shattered a goblet when she learned of the accord, and the shards glimmered like drops of blood upon Tywin's velvet carpet. The lion's den stirred, plans redrawn, ravens launched. In the Isles, Balon Greyjoy's laughter rasped beneath salt-stained rafters. Yet his gaze hardened as he contemplated a north no longer starved for food and coin. Beyond the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen heard only whispers. Yet the notion of northern wolves running with southern roses intrigued her dreams of conquest. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon stood at a tall window and watched the sea churn. "The boy Jon Snow," he muttered, remembering promises unfulfilled. "Perhaps I should have pressed harder." Melisandre's ruby glowed faint in the gloom, her voice purring of fires yet to come. All the while, couriers raced between Winterfell and Highgarden, organizing the bridal procession. The Faith dispatched high septons to bless the union beneath the eyes of the Seven, though Maester Luwin quipped that the old gods might grumble at the intrusion. Invitations flowed to lords great and small, those of honor, those of honor, those of convenience, those whose allegiance might yet pivot on a single scented parchment. Months passed in frenetic preparation. Winterfell's great hall was draped with creeping ivy and linen the color of dawn. Masons worked through night and snow to carve tables shaped like petals and fletch arrow slits into floral curves. At Highgarden, seamstresses embroidered direwolves along the hem of Margaery's gown. Silver threads intertwined with golden vines, roots seeking sunlight beneath fur-lined snow. Robb's tailors fashioned a cloak for Jon of grey fur trimmed with emerald silk, wolf shoulders but a rose's heart. Neither groom nor bride saw one another in that time. Tradition forbade it, though ravens carried letters back and forth, private thoughts, sketches of distant landscapes, jokes about Frey table manners. Jon wrote of Arya's petulant scrawl, found etched on Winterfell's beams, of Bran's dreams of wolves racing through Godswood snow. Margaery replied with anecdotes of her grandmother's acerbic corrections to minstrels, of little Lord Rickon's fascination with Tyrell court players. A tenderness blossomed between ink strokes. And when the first day of the new year dawned, Winterfell brimmed with banners, wolves rampant beside golden roses, silver trout, flayed men, flaring suns. Snowflakes drifted but melted upon arrival, driven back by braziers planted along the courtyard's perimeter. Thousands converged, knights polished bright as new coin, ladies in silks thick enough to shame queenly wardrobes, merchants hawking spiced wine and sugared plums, common folk pressed 3 deep along ramparts for a glimpse of history. Jon stood in the crypts before dawn, solitary among figures of cold stone. He knelt before Ned Stark's tomb, candlelight skittering across carved features that seemed kinder in death than they had in life. "I swore I'd guard them," Jon whispered, words lost to ancient silence. "Today I swear again, and more." He touched his father's knee, stone cool beneath calloused palm. Then he rose, cloak brushing carved dust from forgotten names, and climbed stairs toward clattering preparations. Robb awaited him in the outer yard, armor of dark steel chased with frost silver, cloak billowing in the crisp half-light. "You look like a Stark," he said when Jon approached, voice thick with pride. "Then the clothes serve their purpose," Jon quipped, though nerves roiled in his belly like trapped ravens. Robb pressed a direwolf-etched pommel into his palm. Old Nan's stories claimed a blade given on wedding dawn carried blessings of the old gods. Jon sheathed it beside Longclaw, weight comforting. In the Godswood, beneath the ancient heart tree, Robb's sworn septon murmured prayers while grey direwolf statues watched. Margaery arrived on a gelding white as snowdrift, gown rippling green in the muted light. The hush that fell as she dismounted cut deeper than any war horn. Every breath held to witness wolf meet rose. They faced one another before the weirwood, red leaves fluttering overhead like stained glass. The septon spoke of union, of seasons interwoven, of ice protected by thorn and soil sheltered by snow. Jon pledged to guard Margaery against all shadows. She promised to bring summer's warmth wherever his path grew cold. Vows exchanged, cloaks draped, holy kiss sealed. They turned together, and the courtyard erupted in cheers vibrant enough to shake stones free from Winterfell's oldest walls. Wolves howled as bells tolled, and Ghost raised his muzzle to join them. Salt tears stung Jon's eyes as he looked upon the sea of faces. Robb triumphant beside Queen Talisa, Sansa serene between Lady Mormont and a quietly crying Podrick Payne. Brienne of Tarth standing sentinel over them all. He found Maester Luwin nodding approval. Found even Theon Greyjoy. Returned to Robb's banner after bitter nights of remorse, raising a cup in toast. And beyond banners of blue forget-me-nots fluttered the Highgarden retinue, cheering with voices pure as lark song. For one precious moment, war lay distant, death forgot. Winter met summer, and neither surrendered. And peace, however, is a fragile blossom that frost will not spare. Ravens soon arrived thick as locusts, one after the next. Stannis massing cell sails along the Blackwater. Euron Greyjoy's Ironborn sacking salt pans and sealing bays. Tywin Lannister demanding hostage exchanges to guarantee good faith. Yet the Northreach Pact strengthened both houses' resolve. Grain caravans wove through the Riverlands under umber spears. Reach knights rode the Roserad north, escorting masons, brewers, healers. In White Harbor, Lady Manderly financed shipyards to build carracks, bearing wolfheads and golden blooms alight. Jon and Margaery toured the north that first summer. At Deepwood Moat, she warmed children with stories of reach maidens racing cranes, taught fisherwives to steep mead with lavender, brought from Highgarden stores. At Carhold, she eased the anger of Lord Karstark's kin by honoring fallen sons in songs composed overnight. Jon watched her weave peace with smiles where his sword would have failed. But war's heartbeat quickened. From Dreadfort, Roose Bolton's missives grew less obsequious. His questions about Highgarden grain shipments edged with suspicion. In the Riverlands, Frey outriders stalked Tyrell caravans, testing escort strength. And in King's Landing, Queen Regent Cersei turned to Qyburn's whispered alchemy, forging secrets in blackened towers. Robb summoned council at Winterfell. Around a carved oak table sat Margaery, Olenna's letter advising caution clasped in her hands. Jon gauntlets removed to trace troop positions on a map. Mage Mormont, Roderick Castle, Galbart Glover, Edmure Tully freshly freed from Frey chains. Snow whirled beyond narrow windows, though harvest still ripened in the reach. Our enemies gather, Robb began. We must strike first or be strangled by their noose. He pointed south. The Lannisters hold Harrenhal with a force twice ours, yet they cannot stomach prolonged siege through frost. If we break their grip there, we sever their road to King's Landing and give the Riverlords back their hearths. And now all. Risky, murmured Margaery, but bold. Grandfather has 30,000 spears along the Mander. They could march to meet us at the Blackwater, force Tywin between hammer and anvil. Robb's eyes gleamed with equal parts gratitude and worry. I will not call upon him until you are safely within Winterfell's walls. I did not marry you to hide behind walls. She countered gently. A queen who shelters while her subjects bleed is no queen. Jon broke in. Then I ride south with the vanguard. Let Robb lead the main host. The wolves strike first. The roses bloom in their wake. Robb opened his mouth to protest, but Margaery's hand found Joan's wrist. A wolf cannot charge alone, she said. I will ride with you. Silence rippled like ice cracking on a pond. Mage Mormont barked laughter. The queen has teeth. Robb's jaw tightened, but he exhaled slowly, weighing alliances against brotherhood. If you ride with my direwolves at your side, he decreed. Glover's men will guard you both, and Galbart himself will answer with his life. So I swear, Galbart said hand to heart. Plans unfurled, timelines wrought from parchment and blood. Jon felt purpose thrum beneath his ribs, duty not only to family and kingdom, but to the woman who would share his winters. He thought of the wall distant, of vows old and new colliding like tides. That night, he stood on Winterfell's battlements, frost gathering on his lashes. Margaery joined him, cloak of green velvet clasped by a silver rose. She leaned upon the rampart and gazed northward, where the horizon faded into swirling snow. You remember every shadow, she said softly. I do. Then remember also this, we are not carved in stone. Even winter yields when kissed by spring. Jon turned toward her, lamplight gleaming off her smile. Spring can die beneath ice, or find new roots, she replied. She laid gloved fingers upon his. Do not fear what we may lose. Fear what we may never dare to grow. He drew her hand to his lips, tasting the faint scent of roses. Then we ride at dawn, he murmured. And let the world learn what grows when wolf and rose stand together. She answered him with a nod. Steady, brave. Below, the wind carried ghosts' distant howl to the stars, and the night held its breath, waiting for histories yet unwritten. And dawn arrived blood-red, a promise of trials to come. Yet within its glow, hope bloomed. 60,000 characters of beginnings, of banners unfurled, of hearts laid bare, of a Stark-Tyrell empire trembling on the brink, not of doom, but of possibility. The tale would stretch through siege and snow, through harvest and heartbreak, through victories sung and sacrifices whispered. But for now, as hoofbeats thundered out of Winterfell's gates, Jon Snow and Margaery Tyrell rode side by side, bound by vows and dreams, and the realm tilted toward a future no maester's quill had dared to script. Okay. Steel rang in the yard beneath Winterfell's moon-white walls as the vanguard assembled, iron-shod hooves pawing frosted earth. Dawn's promise glimmered on polished helms. Vapor curled from destriers' nostrils, where torch smoke failed to warm the air. Jon tightened the last buckle on Ghost's new leather collar. Wolf's head stamped upon dyed green hide, and rose to meet his rider's eyes. 70 sworn swords of the north, 40 reach knights led by Sir Robar Rowan, and a lean 100 archers commanded by Galbart Glover formed the spearpoint that would drive south ahead of Robb's main host. In their midst, Margaery Tyrell sat a high-cantled saddle astride her white gelding, cloak of emerald velvet clasped by twin wolf and rose brooches. A hush clung to the courtyard, broken only by restless jingling of reins, and the creak of wooden gates easing open upon snowy fields. Robb appeared on the steps overlooking the yard, gray mantle swirling, gray wind stalking at his heel. Though kingly burdens etched new lines beside his eyes, pride brightened them now as he raised a hand. Ride swift, he called. Ride fierce. Let the realm feel the bite of northern winter and the bloom of reach summer, all in one charge. I will follow, and together we shall free Harrenhal from its chains. Bendo. Jon nudged his gelding forward, long claw heavy against his hip, and answered with a crisp salute of gloved fingers to brow. Margaery mirrored the gesture, her smile a pale sunrise that lent courage to men who had never ridden beside a queen before. Then Galbart Glover gave the signal. A sharp blast on a horn carved with interwoven roses and direwolves. Hooves thundered, banners unfurled. Wolf's head rampant beside Golden Blossom, and Winterfell's gates yawned wide to let them spill into the white world beyond. They rode hard that day, cutting southward along the King's Road until the snow thinned beneath hoofbeats and pine gave way to birch. By dusk they reached the crossing of the White Knife, where spring meltwater ran swift between ice-clad rocks. Jon ordered camp on the river's south bank, posting double watches, though no foe lurked so far north. Tents sprang like mushrooms across muddy sedge, and fires crackled against the chill. Margaery walked the camp lines before supper, trading jests with green boys and listening to veterans recount the names of kin lost at the Twins. She paused often to kneel beside wounded hounds, tracing healing poultices upon ragged ears. Jon watched from the shadows, struck by how quickly she found language for every soul she met, whether the rough gallows humor of Umber's or the soft-spoken courtesy of Rowan's Reachman. Later, they shared a simple meal of oatcakes and smoked hare by a low fire. Sparks drifted into the blue-black dusk, and Ghost lay between them, muzzle resting on Jon's boot. The hush of running water stitched small silences into their conversation. "Will the men follow me?" Jon asked at last, voice scarcely louder than the river's murmur. "They already do," Margaery answered, smoothing her cloak over bent knees. "Not because you command, but because you listen. Fear sways soldiers, but respect binds them." She tipped her head toward the dark ranks of tents. "They see how you greet each man by name, even the lowliest squire. And remember your eyes when you speak. That alone bridges the gulf between north and reach faster than any sigil on silk. Da. Jon traced a fingertip along Longclaw's pommel. I was groomed to be invisible. Bastards are seldom taught to lead. But wolves are born to run at the fore, she countered. And roses climb higher by clinging to something steadfast. Moonlight etched silver across her brow, picking threads of frost from her dark curls. You will not fail, Jon Stark. They slept in separate tents. Tradition held until wedding sheets were publicly inspected, but dawn found them again at the head of the column. South, they pressed through the neck, skirting the stagnant pools of the bog as crannogmen ferried them on reed rafts while Ghost eyed the brackish water with suspicion. Reed warriors offered tidings of ironborn raids upon Tallheart Coast, and whispered of pale riders glimpsed in dead marshes by moonlight. Such talk sent shivers even through hardened veterans. But Jon stored the rumors away, mindful of ancient oaths to guard the realms of men. Emerging into the Riverlands on the 12th day, they discovered charred farmsteads dotting the countryside like scabs upon greening skin. Smoke-stained rafters jutted against the lonely sky where Lannister foragers had passed, taking grain and lives with equal brutality. Margaery insisted upon halting beside each ruin. She walked the ashen floors, plucked cracked children's cups from the dust, and whispered a prayer in the names of strangers. The men followed her example, raising cairns over shallow graves. That night Jon found her weeping quietly beside a row of fresh stones. We cannot right every wrong, he murmured, offering his cloak. Perhaps not. She replied, accepting the wool. But we can bear witness. If the living cease to mourn, we welcome monsters. And thou. Her words lingered as north winds died upon southern breezes. On the 15th day scouts galloped in, their mounts lathered. A force of mounted sellswards flying Lannister crimson had encamped near the village of Seven Streams, 3 leagues ahead. Jon convened council beneath an alder thicket, while dawn mist still clung to grass. Galbart urged a night assault. Ser Robar favored flanking through the fields. Margaery questioned the safety of villagers caught between blades. In the end, Jon devised a plan both bold and precise. At dusk, Glover's archers crept through tall barley bordering the village, while Rowan's knights fined a drunken approach along the main track. Voices raised in bawdy song. Jon and a dozen picked spearmen slipped around the rear beneath cover of darkness, Ghost padding ahead as silent as falling ash. When the sellswards stumbled from alehouse to jeer at the lost northerners, flaming arrows streaked the dusk, igniting wagons laden with stolen grain. Amid flames and confusion, Jon's spearmen burst into the camp, cutting down surprised guards while Ghost hamstrung the captain's charger. The skirmish ended before stars surfaced, barley fields lit by orange flicker. Of the Lannister banner, only a ragged scrap remained, trampled into mud. Margaery tended wounded villagers by torchlight, binding limbs with linen torn from her own shift. Children clutched her skirts, eyes wide, while Reach knights doled bread from their saddlebags. At dawn, a grateful widow pressed a carved wooden wolf into Jon's palm. To guide you home, she said, gaze misty. Jon fastened it to his reins. Silent. News of the vanguard's victory sped through the Riverlands on sparrow wings. Refugees flocked to their banner, offering fresh horses, jars of pickled beets, whispered intelligence. They spoke of Harrenhal filled with Lannister host, Sir Gregor Clegane's butchers patrolling the walls, while Lord Tywin himself remained entombed in stone towers that stank of smoke and blood from endless pyres. By the time the column reached the God's Eye, autumn sun cast long bars of crimson across its glassy surface. Harrenhal loomed on the opposite shore, a black silhouette of melted towers clawing at the sky. Jon reined to a halt beneath a stand of willow, studying that jagged skyline. Tales said Harren's massive walls had never fallen from assault, only dragonfire. Yet within those walls, Tywin's strength guarded the King's Road like a mailed fist. That evening, Jon convened council in a half-collapsed sept outside the ruined village of Lawleston. Moonlight filtered through shattered rose windows, striping the dusty floor with pale bars. Galbart spread rough maps on a prayer stone altar. Main gate fronted by Ravelin and 20 scorpions, he reported. Clegane's outriders patrol thrice daily, dawn, midday, dusk. The lakeside is weaker, collapsed sections along the eastern curtain, but water deep enough to drown armored men. Now, rats know every crack, Mage Mormont's nephew Jonel said, pointing at the walls. A boy could slip where a knight cannot. Jon considered. We need entry before Robb's host arrives. His gaze slid to Margaery. Do your roses hide thorns suited for darkness? She smiled, a flash of moonlit intrigue. My grandmother taught me the deadliest thorns are the ones unseen. At Highgarden we have gardeners who prune roses while blindfolded. They move at night as well as day. She touched the map lightly beside the collapsed east wall. Give me 6 of your lightest riders and Sir Robbar's swiftest bowmen. At moonrise, we row across the God's Eye, scale this breach and open the fisherfolk gate from within. Her voice remained calm, but Jon saw the thrill of danger glint behind blue eyes. If anything goes awry, then Harrenhal still burns. She finished for him. But so do we. She turned to the gathered captains. Better a bright blaze than a slow rot. Sir Robbar nodded, as did Galbart. Even Meg's nephew grinned, tugging fingerless gloves tighter. Plans flowed swift. Rowan's archers would set diversions along the north palisade. Glover's spearmen would press the western Ravelin with shield wall. Drawing scorpion fire, Jon himself would lead a second infiltration from the south postern, once Margaery's force engaged within. Ghost, restless at his side, paced like white mist. The moon rose full and fat, painting the God's Eye silver. 6 narrow skiffs slid from reed-choked banks, oars muffled with felt. Margaery crouched at the bow of the lead craft. Green cloak pinned beneath her knees, hair bound in a plain leather thong. Behind her rode Jonel Mormont, Sir Robbar's cousin Parman Crane, and 4 silent reach archers. Jon watched from shadowed reeds until their shapes melted into ripples against Harrenhal's gnarled reflection, then signaled his men to move. On the western bank Rowan's archers loosed flaming shafts into haystacks, left by Gregor's quartermasters. Fire blossomed bright, smoke coiling upward like a summons to forgotten gods. Horns bellowed from Harrenhal's walls. Scorpions cranked. The Hound of Clegane bellowed orders. In that uproar Jon southward, raiders darted across marshy shallows, ghost-like. Ghost himself loped ahead, muzzle near to water, paws silent. Within the castle, Margaery's party slipped through the fallen east curtain. Scaling fused black stone slick with old ash. The archers neutralized lone sentries with cloth-wrapped shafts. Jonel's dirk flashed when a guard stumbled upon them in a weed-choked corridor. Navigating half-collapsed halls, they found the fisherfolk gate, manned by 3 aging men, more peasants than soldiers. Parman Crane soothed them with a pouch of silver, while Margaery swung the heavy winch, sweat glistening along her collarbones. Chains clanked, the gate yawed open. Jon's raiding party poured through like northern wind. Steel hissed in smoky courtyards. Rowan's diversion swelled as wagons of flame crashed against barricades. Within the labyrinthine belly of Harrenhal, pockets of Lannister soldiers fought back, hampered by confusion, stumbling through halls haunted by shrieking echoes of melted stone. Jon drove forward, Longclaw's Valyrian steel tearing chain and mail. Ghost leapt upon a sergeant wielding a torch, crunching through gorget and throat. Galbart spears locked shields, pushing foes toward blazing granaries. Margaery found herself cut off near the collapsed kitchens, Robbar's cousin slain at her feet. Flames danced along timbers overhead. She gripped a fallen mace two-handed, praying to the mother as a blood-soaked sellsword advanced. When he swung, a white blur barreled from smoke. Ghost, stained crimson, slammed the man aside. Jon followed, cutting him down. You shouldn't have come so deep, he muttered, chest heaving. If roses feared thorns, they would never bloom, she retorted, though her knuckles whitened on the mace. By dawn, Harrenhal's gates stood in Stark-Tyrell hands. Surviving Lannister men knelt in the bleak courtyard, disarmed. Jon raised the Wolf and Rose banner upon the Widow's Tower. its silks catching sunrise. Cheers broke from weary throats, echoing through cracked vaults, where the ghosts of Harren the Black hissed. Margaery climbed the tower beside him, gaze sweeping across the god's eye now tinted rose gold. "You bled for this," Jon said softly. "So did you," she answered. "Ace did those whose names songs will forget." She reached for his hand across the battlement's cold stone. "We must build more than walls from their sacrifice." Below, ravens took flight. One north to Robb's encamped host near Pink Maiden, one south toward Highgarden, and one west across burned villages to Lannisport. 2 days later, as Robb's banners billowed through Harrenhal's breached gates to thunderous acclaim, Tywin Lannister learned of the castle's fall, while dining in his encampment outside King's Landing. He set aside his bread calmly, wiped red wine from his lip, and summoned his war council. Those near enough saw a muscle twitch along the lion's jaw, the only crack in marble composure. Within the week, ravens bearing crimson wax reached Roose Bolton at the Dreadfort, offering pacts written in golden ink for betrayals yet unnamed. At Seaguard, Walder Frey's sons exchanged anxious looks over council tables, counting deaths and ghostly wolves. On Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon paced chevron flagstones, Melisandre's ruby shimmering heartbeat red, as she whispered of king's blood beating now in the cold halls of Harrenhal. And beyond the wall, a single bright blue eye opened in the darkness as a white shambled forth, sensing distant shifts in living warmth. Yet inside Harrenhal, life stirred differently. Robb proclaimed a harvest festival in honor of the fallen, ordering grain stores redistributed to starving villages. Maesters purified the stables, Tyrell gardeners planted hardy herbs in shattered courtyards, and blacksmiths fired up ruined forges. Children crept from hiding among the burnt huts beyond the walls, drawn by the scent of fresh bread. Margaery organized them into games, awarding polished riverstones as prizes. She walked the ramparts at dusk, teaching Galbart's archers a reach song of valor that drifted over glimmering lake water like a benediction. One night, as candles sputtered low in the Widow's Tower solar, Jon unrolled a freshly arrived raven scroll. Its seal bore a crimson sunburst. House Karstark. He scanned the letter thrice, jaw clenching. "Bad tidings?" Margaery asked from a settle beneath a bearskin, where she mended a boy's torn cloak. "Lord Rickard Karstark refuses to send his oath-men," Jon answered, voice edged. "He calls any pact with southern roses an insult to northern dead." Margaery set her needle aside. "He grieves his sons lost in battle. Grief can poison wiser heads." Jon paced to the arrow slit, watching torches flicker across the lower bailey. "Grief cannot bar the realm's survival. If Karstark severs now, others may follow. Then perhaps we ride north again," she suggested. "Speak to him face to face. A letter can lie by omission. An embrace cannot." He turned, meeting her steady gaze. "You'd brave that journey. Snow wolves, Greyjoy reavers. For a man who hates our union? For a realm that needs it?" She replied, rising. Moonlight outlined her silhouette in silver. A rose can break stone if given time. Jon closed the distance, hands finding hers. "And what breaks rose?" he asked. "Only neglect." She lifted onto her toes, brushing lips against his cheek. "First shy, then certain. Fear not, Lord Stark. We will root deeper than winter." And winter, however, had plots of its own. 2 moons after Harrenhal's fall, outriders brought word of Tywin's host marching north from the Blackwater, reinforced by fresh sellswards paid with treasury gold. The Lannister lions sought to recapture the castle before deep snows sealed passes. Robb called war council in the shattered hall of 100 hearths, its walls still soot-marred from dragons long dead. Candles guttered before drafts that hissed through cracked stone. "They outnumber us nearly 2 to 1, Galbart reported, finger-tracing troop markers. Yet they march heavy, laden with siege engines. If we harry them across the open ground toward the lake, we might break their supply lines before they array." "Then see." Robb's gaze slid to Jon. "Can you bleed them without snapping our spear?" "We can strike and fade," Jon responded. Rowan's knights along the flanks, Maeg's bear women in the reeds. Let the lion taste northern winter before snow even falls. And if Tywin faints, Margaery interjected. He is not Clegane. He feasts on overconfidence. She stepped beside the map, tapping Harrenhal itself. We must ensure the castle cannot be retaken in a single night's assault. Strengthen the east wall breach, flood the postern tunnels, burn the old stables, deny him shelter. Men? Isti. Robb nodded. Do it. He straightened, iron circlet glinting. And if Tywin reaches our walls, he will find them defended by a queen as fierce as any wolf. Snow began to fall 3 nights later, soft at first, then swirling. Jon's vanguard harried the Lannister column along the causeway, cutting down outriders, torching fodder wagons. Margaery rode with them, cloaked in gray fur. Her hair laced tight. She carried a light recurved bow, a reach design of layered yew, and her arrows found gaps between gorgets with unsettling accuracy. Each skirmish cost Tywin another handful of men, another wagon, another hour. On the 7th day of pursuit, Jon's scouts discovered a frozen ford across a tributary of the Trident. Tywin's engineers had dammed the water to drag siege catapults, but night frost turned mud to brittle glass. Jon arrayed his archers along willow banks, while Rowan's knights circled south. Then, at first light, drums beat. Flaming shafts ignited tar-soaked wheels. Hooves shattered ice. Foal screamed. Lannister spearmen attempted a shield wall, but a sudden howl rent the dawn. Robb himself charged from hidden woods with gray wind leading. Main host arrived sooner than Tywin dreamed. Battle erupted in drifting snow, sound muffled by white silence. Jon cut a path toward Tywin's crimson command tent, but the lion retreated beneath heavy guard, ceding broken siege engines to the wolves. By dusk, the field lay littered with splintered wood and blackened banners. Thousands dead or dying, but still Tywin escaped, limping south beneath hail. Robb forbade pursuit. Let him flee, he told his bloodied captains. His pride is wounded deeper than any blade. Word of this rout will sow doubt throughout his bannermen. But Jon saw worry flicker in his brother's eyes. Tywin's survival was a poisonous knot, tightening unseen. They returned to Harrenhal through snow that deepened each hour. Fires were stoked in every hall. Tyrell cooks turned scarce grain into thick stews laced with onion. Children laughed in corridors, chasing ghosts wagging tail. Yet above the warmth and crackle lay whispers of Karstark's stubborn defiance, of Bolton's silent watch at the Dreadfort, of wildlings massing beyond a wall poorly manned since Jon left. Ravens brought reports of pale beasts seen near Last Hearth, creatures with eyes like cold stars and flesh that did not bleed. Jon read those missives long after candles waned, stomach twisting. One such night, as snow hissed against window slits, he met Samwell Tarly arriving half-frozen at Harrenhal's gatehouse, escorted by black brothers. Sam fell into Jon's arms, weeping. "The dead walk," he sobbed. "We saw them at the Fist. Only fire stops them, and we have so little." Jon brought Sam to Margaery, who listened grave-faced. "Winter is not a word in your songs, my lady," Sam said, voice shaking. "Nor death such as this. The wall needs every hand, even a queen's prayer." Margaery laid fingers on Sam's sleeve. "You shall have more than prayers," she promised. "You shall have grain wool, dragonglass if it can be found, and tales carried south so lords may understand the storm upon them." Yet to muster such aid required unity. And unity frayed. Roose Bolton at last replied to Robb's summons, arriving under banners of flayed man cloaked blood-red against snow. His cold gray gaze lingered upon Margaery as though measuring cloth. "Foes on every front, yet you choose to war in Riverlands mud." Bolton remarked that first supper, voice soft. Perhaps kingship would better serve in Winterfell's walls. Robb's jaw tightened. A king serves where his people bleed. Bolton's smile never reached his eyes. "Bleed they shall, if rumors of frozen specters prove true. We should look to our own hearths, rather than harvest songs in southern sun." Down. That night, Margaery found Jon on the ramparts, scanning snow-silvered fields. "The Boltons itch," she whispered. slipping her arm through his. A rose's perfume masks daggers, but cannot dull them. She tilted her face to his. "Will the wolves hold?" "If they do not," he answered, kissing frost from her brow, "we build a new pact." He pulled her close. Roses and wolves alike. And spring seemed a myth as snow piled high upon Harrenhal's courtyards, but within its melted stones glowed the forge of an empire struggling to be born. Maesters studied dragonglass shards recovered from old Valyrian ruins Tyrell explorers once mapped. Reach engineers experimented with scorpion bolts tipped in obsidian. Rangers recruited from northern clans slipped beyond the wall bearing Margaery's colors, escorted by seasoned brothers of the Night's Watch, mission to distribute grain and hope in equal measure. Letters passed between Olenna, now ruling Highgarden in Mace's stead, and Robb, filled with tart wit and tactical insight. She urged a great council to name a high wardenship that spanned both North and Reach, uniting coast to coast against Ice and Lion alike. But shadows lengthened too. Bolton's men whispered with Frey envoys in smoke-filled alcoves. A knight of the Reach was found dead in the stables, throat neatly opened. No culprit named. Samwell's report spoke of fist ruins carpeted in corpses that would not rot. Tywin rallied new hosts, using coin borrowed from the Iron Bank of Bravos, promising repayment in wolf pelts and rose thorns. And somewhere in the Far East, dragons grew beneath the gaze of a silver-haired queen, whose courtiers murmured of three-headed destinies. On the first day of the new year, Robb convened court in Harrenhal's great hall. Snow sifted through gaps in the roof, but braziers roared. Margaery stood at Jon's side, her presence as steady as the carved wooden wolf resting on his belt. "The realm stands at a crossroads," Robb announced to assembled lords. "Lions gather, dead walk, winter bites. We need a summit, a council of all great houses, willing to fight for life beyond banners." He drew ice, Eddard Stark's greatsword reforged after the twins, its edge glinting like dawn on hoarfrost. "Upon this blade I swear, any lord who comes to Harrenhal under truce shall dine beneath my roof and leave unharmed. We will forge a league against winter, or perish divided." A murmur rolled through the hall. Roose Bolton's expression never shifted, but his bastard son Ramsay smirked. Galbart Glover nodded grim approval. Meg Mormont slammed her spear butt on flagstones thrice, bear women echoing. Lord Rowan called the vow, worthy of summer's sun. Margaery squeezed Jon's hand, pulse quick beneath his thumb. That night they lay together in the solar, snowlight melting across tangled blankets. Jon traced the curve of Margaery's shoulder. "Do you regret riding north?" he asked. She smiled, hair fanned like midnight silk across his chest. "I regret only the hours lost before I rode beside you." Her palm pressed over his heart. "There are whispers you carry dragon blood. Stark of ice, Targaryen of fire." Jon stilled. Tales spun by maesters drunk on old prophecies. "I know only that I am Ned Stark's son. Bastard or lord, ice or fire." "Perhaps you are both," she said. "Ice to temper fire, fire to warm ice. The realm needs balance, not purity." She brushed lips to his. "Whatever your blood, it is your choices that crown you." He kissed her, gratitude pouring. Outside, wind howled down broken towers, yet within, hearts beat fierce and unafraid. Ender. Ravens flew far, and replies returned like tides. The Vale's young Lord Robert Arryn accepted, lured by promises of bread and sword lessons from Robb's captains. Dorne, nursing old Martell wounds, agreed to send Princess Arianne as envoy, her eyes bright with sun-speared ambition. Even the Ironborn muttered of parley. Yara Greyjoy rumored to sail upriver, restless beneath her father's decrees. Yet the crown refused, Cersei denouncing any council called by traitor wolf and perfumed rose, Tywin reinforcing holdfasts along the Blackwater. The council drew near. Snow melted into slush beneath early spring currents, but cold lingered. Jon drilled recruits in the outer yard. Margaery oversaw spice gardens blooming in warmed glasshouses, and Samwell copied ancient texts on obsidian lore. Tension vibrated in hallways as Bolton's men eyed Tyrell knights across supper trestles. Robb paced battlements nightly, gray wind padding. On the eve of arrival, a storm of freezing rain lashed Harrenhal, drumming upon melted towers. Jon stood watch above the fisherfolk gate when horns blared. Riders approached under Karstark banners, yet as they neared torches, black sigils of flayed men intermingled. Alarm rippled. Jon descended into the yard, sword out. Riders thundered through the half-raised portcullis. At their head rode Ramsay Snow, cloak crimson with fresh wet. Behind him, captives, Karstark men bound and bloody, were dragged by neck. Ramsay dismounted, tossed a severed head at Jon's feet. Snowmelt pooled pink around it. "Compliments from my lord father," he drawled. "The Karstark rebellion is ended." Jon's stomach clenched. "By whose authority?" "By the king's hand, appointed in absence of Tywin's decency." Ramsay smirked. "My lord father wears new gloves, stitched from Karstark fur." Margaery strode from the keep, robes flaring. "Release those men. They came under truce." Ramsay's gaze slid over her. "Pretty rose, careful of thorns." He bowed mockingly, then turned to Jon. "My father requests audience with your brother, King Robb. Important matters of succession." He patted the head dangling from his saddle. "He brings proof of loyalty." Jon's fingers tightened on Longclaw. Torchlight danced upon Valyrian ripples. "You ride under my roof," he said quietly. "Remember where you stand." Ramsay's smile widened. "In a ruin inhabited by ghosts. Some of them, I hear, still scream." His gaze flicked to Ghost prowling at Jon's heel, lips peeled in silent snarl. "Keep your pet leashed." Before Jon could answer, Margaery stepped forward, meeting Ramsay's gaze, unflinching. "Ghost is no pet, and neither am I. Deliver your father's message, then leave these walls alive while generosity lasts." Ramsay laughed, but a flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes. He dropped reins to a groom and strutted toward the hall. Captive Karstark stumbled after. Jon exchanged a glance with Margaery. Shadows lengthened. Inside, Bolton's arrival shifted the board. Roose knelt before Robb, yet offered counsel laced with poison. Karstark treason crushed, Stark loyalists needed a firm hand, and a northern queen would silence murmurs of Southron influence. He proposed a union. Sansa Stark, returned from King's Landing by clandestine means, to wed his son Ramsay and bind wolves to flayed men. Robb refused. Fury sparked behind Bolton's calm eyes. "Then winter will devour those who misplace trust," he murmured. That night, Sansa slipped into Harrenhal, disguised as a washerwoman, escorted by the Hound who had turned cloak once more. Reunions spilled tears, but threats loomed. Cersei surely hunted her. Sansa told of Joffrey's cruelty, of whispered wildfire caches beneath King's Landing, of a plan to burn the city rather than yield to rebels or invaders. Council stretched until dawn, plans redrawn. Margaery suggested sending Sansa to Highgarden for safety. Jon argued she belonged with family. Robb feared moving her would spark Lannister pursuit. Meanwhile, Roose Bolton's men patrolled corridors with two keen smiles. Days later, the Great Council began. Lords arrived beneath banners heavy with snowmelt. The Vale's escort of slender knights in sky-blue cloaks. Dorne's sand-silk retinue perfumed and steel-tipped. Iron-borne longships moored along the lake's icy edge. Yara Greyjoy striding ashore with axes crossed on back. Even a band of Black Brothers led by acting Lord Commander Bowen Marsh attended, stark in boiled leather. Yet with them came secrets, grudges, ambitions. In the first session, debates flared. Should the Northreach Alliance claim the Iron Throne or abolish it and crown regional kings? Should grain be withheld until Southern lords bent knee, or gifted freely to prove honor? Samwell spoke of undead armies, while Dornish envoys argued the real battle lay against Cersei's wildfire. The hall rang with voices until torches guttered and ash crumbled from ceilings. Margaery emerged as mediator, guiding discourse with gentle firmness. She seated Yara beside Princess Arianne, finding shared disdain for Lannister arrogance. She coaxed Lord Grafton of Gulltown to fund grain flotillas, promising the Vale a share of Reach olive oil. She even convinced Bowen Marsh to send ravens bearing true reports of undead to every sept in Westeros, shaming any septon who doubted. Jon watched, awe deepening. In skirmish she wielded arrows. In council, she wielded hearts. Her presence gave weight to Sam's warnings, lent grace to Robb's iron. And when tensions threatened to tear the hall apart, she called for a moment of silence, reminding all of the dead beyond these walls. Harrenhal's charred ghosts, Seven Streams' widows, children buried in snowdrifts. The hush that followed was profound. Yet, not all hearts softened. In midnight hours, Roose Bolton plotted with Frey envoys, vows traded for revenge. Ramsay prowled corridors, questions on his tongue about snow bastards, and rose perfume. Tywin assembled a new legion at Casterly Rock, commanded by Sir Kevan, planning a march through the Westerlands to relieve siege on River Run, then swing east. And far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen received word of a Stark-Tyrell empire rising, and her dragons roared. In Harrenhal's Godswood, little more than a withered heart tree clinging to life beside molten walls, Jon knelt with Ghost at his side. Snow fell soft, hushing the world. He prayed to old gods, to Ned's memory, to unknown spirits that wove wolf and rose. Footsteps whispered behind him. Margaery joined, kneeling. She laced her fingers with his. I used to pray beneath great oaks in the Reach. She murmured. I begged for gentle summers, plentiful harvests, laughter in my father's halls. Now I pray for winter's mercy, for swords to rust, for children to dream. Jon squeezed her hand. Old gods listen seldom, but perhaps new prayers breach ancient ears. He inhaled cold air laden with leaf rot and snow dust. I will keep you safe. And I you, she whispered. They rose together, snowflakes catching in her lashes. Nearby the heart tree's red leaves trembled, as though still alive. A single crimson leaf tore free, spiraling to land between their joined hands. They shared a look, promise unspoken. Da. Spring thaw crept north, rivers swelling. But with melt came blood. Scouts reported Bolton banners slipping quietly east, Frey barges leaving the twins under cover of fog. At dawn, after council adjourned, an explosion rocked Harrenhal. Wildfire casks hidden in a disused tower ignited, sending green flames surging skyward. Debris rained upon courtyards, dozens died. In the chaos, Ramsay vanished, Sansa abducted, and Samwell gravely wounded shielding a stable boy. Jon and Robb led frantic searches through shattered corridors, ghost tracking burnt iron scent. They found a tunnel newly dug beneath the eastern wall, Bolton handiwork. Outside, snowmelt revealed footprints leading to the lake where skiffs awaited. The trail ended amid reed beds, blood upon broken paddles, but no bodies. Robb's fury shook the very towers. He vowed to hunt Bolton and any Frey conspirator. Yet Margaery urged caution. Tywin's host approached, dragons stirred afar, undead prowled the north. We must guard the living before avenging the dead, she pleaded. Jon stood torn between vengeance and duty. His dreams returned, wolves racing through winter forest, dragons circling blood-red sky, a child's voice crying for home. He thought of Karstark bitterness, Bolton betrayal, Frey treachery, and saw endless cycles of northern honor slipping into southern deceit. Only unity might break the wheel. At last he made choice. He knelt before Robb in the great hall, torches sputtering. Name me Warden of the North in your stead, he said. Let me ride to Winterfell, raise every heart still loyal, secure the wall against dead. You march south with Queen and Council, face Tywin on open field, and show the realm our strength. Two fires burn brighter than one. Robb's eyes glimmered, pride warring with fear. He drew ice, set it on Jon's shoulder. Rise, Lord Jon Stark, Warden of the North. Guard our people, guard our hopes. He kissed his brother's brow. Margaery stepped close, voice hushed. We part only to meet again. She pressed a ring into Jon's palm, a slender band of pale oak wrapped by a silver rose thorn. "So you remember Summer's promise." He slid it upon a leather cord, fastened round his neck. Their kiss lingered, tangled futures, unshed tears. The next dawn, Jon rode out from Harrenhal beneath flurries of fresh snow. Ghost bounding ahead, 1,000 riders in his wake, wolves and roses intertwined. Behind him, Harrenhal's towers faded into mist where Robb mustered banners for the march south. 2 suns seemed to rise that morning, one pale and distant, and one fierce within every heart that dared still hope. Ahead lay treachery, ice, dragons, wildfire, and shadows older than the wall. But within cloak and ring and memory, Jon carried the scent of distant gardens, the heat of Margaery's hand, the hush of godswood leaves, and that was light enough to guide a wolf through winter, and perhaps a realm to dawn. And now, hey. Oh. Snow greeted Jon Stark's vanguard long before the battered columns of horse and foot drew sight of the rolling farmland around the Riverlands. The brief thaw that had accompanied their ride south to Harrenhal no longer whispered in the wind. Instead, deep winter reasserted itself with a vengeance, sweeping in fierce and sudden from the shivering sea. Long curtains of white blurred the horizon, billowing across half-frozen rivers and laying a ghostly pall over lonely barrow mounds that loomed like ancient, slumbering beasts. Each morning, the world emerged from beneath a fresh blanket of drift heaps that reached the stirrup as the men led their horses onto the king's road. Yet the cold sharpened purpose in every heartbeat. Jon rode at the head of the column, Ghost loping ahead in luminous silence, the direwolf's muzzle powdered in frost. 1,000 men accompanied him, 2/3 Northmen seasoned by years of brutal campaigning. 1/3 Reach Knights chosen for their speed and skill rather than sheer weight of mail. Intermixed traveled a detachment of Black Brothers, bearing missives from Bowen Marsh, and 36 freedmen from the Riverlands, who had pledged allegiance after seeing the Wolf and Rose banner raised above Harrenhal's cracked towers. They marched to strengthen the wall, to rally doubters behind Winterfell's banners, and to warn every holdfast from White Harbor to Carhold that the true enemy gathered not in Lannister camps, but beyond a barrier of ancient ice. At dusk on the 17th day, they reached the crossroads near the ruins of Torrhen Square. Embers glimmered in the fireplace of the old inn, recently abandoned by small folk fleeing deeper into the woods. Jon ordered scouts forward, rangers wearing mottled gray cloaks, and set his main encampment in the lee of the inn's stony remnants. Snow swirled around smoking chimneys long cold. The smell of half-burnt peat still clung to the hearth. Inside, Samuel Tarly warmed his hands above a rekindled fire, his round cheeks flushed scarlet beneath a layer of soot. He had insisted on traveling despite his wounds, claiming every raven he carried might mean an extra sword on the wall. Jon loosened his cloak, shaking snow from his shoulders. "Any sign of Karstark outriders?" he asked the grimy ranger who appeared behind him, a bear-like man from the hills north of Deepwood Motte. "None, lord," the man grunted. "But we found fresh boot prints in the wood, heading east. Could be poachers or worse." Jon's eyes narrowed. Roose Bolton's betrayal and Ramsay's cruelty had driven dozens of families from their steads. Deserters might turn bandit when hunger gnawed. "Double the perimeter pickets," he ordered. "If shadows move, loose no arrow unless you're certain. We are wolves, not butchers." Outside, men erected pikes at the camp's edges and strung rope between standing stones to keep horses from wandering. Fires popped and hissed under spits loaded with salt pork, their rich smell wafting into the night sky. Ghost paced the outer ring, white as drifting ash, crimson eyes flashing whenever a stranger drew near. Sam approached Jon while he sharpened Longclaw beside the inn's broken doorway. "A message," he said shyly, extending a roll of parchment sealed with a broken wax direwolf. "Came just before dusk from Maester Luwin, flown by fast wing from Winterfell." Jon slit the ribbon. The Maester's precise hand delivered a short report. Karstark levies massed near Carhold. Banners bearing the sunburst of the Dreadfort and the twin towers of Frey marched up the King's Road 5 leagues south of the last river. And most chilling, Travelers abandoning villages along the coast whispered that the dead themselves harried the night roads outside Last Hearth. Lewin's final line carried weight enough to crack bone. Whites sighted by trusted rangers near the Umber's holdings. Request immediate aid. Winter approaches on silent feet. Jon exhaled slowly, folding the parchment. The inn's fire sputtered behind him, as though sharing his unease. Sam watched him with open dread. "Send ravens back," Jon said. "Tell Maester Lewin we march by dawnlight. We steer west to Last Hearth first, then to Winterfell. Ghost and I will ride ahead with 24 rangers to warn the Umbers." Sam nodded, quill already scratching fresh ink. Jon turned to his captains. Galbart Glover, grim beneath a helm scarred at Whispering Wood. Sir Arlen Oakhart, whose Reach Knight served under Margaery's writ. And Hallis Hornwood, still limping from an arrow wound taken at the Trident tributary. Within moments, plan became action. Supplies reorganized for forced march. Wounded distributed to wagons, and signal horns readied should undead appear. And they rode under a sky black with swirling flakes, the world reduced to shifting shapes beyond torchlight. Frost-clad willows lined the narrow track to Last Hearth. The moon glimmered pallid above. A half-eaten coin glimpsed through scudding cloud. Jon felt each hoofbeat reverberate in his chest, an echo of every oath he had ever sworn. He thought of Margaery's ring looped beneath his cloak, resting against his sternum. Oak and silverthorn. Summer's memory guiding him north. Near dawn they found the first bodies. A pair of Umbers, sentries by their cloaks, lay sprawled across the road, faces blue and contorted. No traitorous blade had felled them. No marauder's arrow protruded from mail. Instead, their throats were ripped open, flesh frozen mid-bleed, eyes milky with ice. The snow around them bore no prints save the wind's. Jon knelt, gloved fingers brushing severed cartilage at the neck. Smooth, almost surgical. "Teeth," growled Dire Darla, the bearded spearwife from Bear Island who knelt opposite. "Saw White do the same at the fist, Lord Stark. Rips as easy as warm cheese." Jon swallowed. "Burn them. We carry no corpses north." Torches flashed. Oily smoke curled skyward as the pyre took. Snow ash drifted like cinders of lost summer. 2 miles further, Last Hearth loomed. Its stone walls stark against dawn's dim blush. No smoke rose from the chimneys. The main gate stood ajar, one leaf sagging on busted hinges. Ghost padded forward, hackles bristling. A low growl thrumming in his throat. Jon signaled silence. Rangers drew bows, arrows knocked. They slipped beneath the arch. What met them drained color from even the boldest cheeks. The courtyard was littered with corpses. Umbers, small folk. A few Karstark men evidently caught in negotiations. All bore the same ghastly ruin. Skin waxed, eyes lifeless, throats gnawed, limbs bent at spidery angles. An empty long hall gaped open, its oaken doors smashed inward. Faint, reddish, scratch marks scored the threshold where bare hands had tried to claw free. Snowlight flickered off Jon's blade as he stepped through the entry hall. Benches overturned, a hearth fire smothered. Ale spilled across frozen reeds. Among the bodies sprawled near the high table lay Greatjon Umber himself, massive frame slumped in final defiance. A meat cleaver lodged deep in his own chest, as though he'd chosen self-slaughter over returning a slave to whatever power slew him. Tears blurred Jon's vision. The Greatjon had laughed at every feast, roared at every jest, lifted Jon high as a pup on his shoulders. Galbart's voice cracked behind him. We were too late. Jon gripped Longclaw's hilt until numbness bit his knuckles. Gather their banners, wolf and giant alike, he murmured. Build pyres inside the yard. They will not rise against us. He turned to his rangers. Search every cellar, any breath of life, find it. Hours passed in grim labor as flames devoured Last Hearth's dead, and thick smoke billowed upward, visible for leagues. They rescued only 6 souls. 3 gnarled Crannogmen traders who had sheltered beneath overturned wagons. A trembling serving girl, and Lord Umber's ward, a boy of 9 who clutched a wooden stag and spoke not a word. Each survivor told the same tale. The dead came with silent snow, slipping through barred doors like mist. Cold seeped through wood and stone. Hearts stopped before screams left throats. Those who fought died quickly, then rose again, attacking kin with teeth and nails, until the great Jon himself crushed an iron chandelier down upon the hall, trapping hundreds beneath a rain of burning pitch. He'd known it was futile, but he'd bought them time to hide. Standing above the pyres, Jon felt despair's chill deeper than any winter wind. The wall, undermanned, faced such horrors each night now. How many castles would fall? How many hearths extinguish? He wrote by flickering lamplight that eve, dispatching ravens. To Robb at Harrenhal, to Stannis on Dragonstone, to Queen Margaery. Though that letter began simply "My Rose" and ended after 6 drafts, ink blurred by tears. He told them of Last Hearth, of great Jen's valor, of wights walking short leagues from Winterfell. He begged, hastened relief or at least faith. The old gods alone could not shield them. And 2 days later, they reached Winterfell, just as twilight painted the snow-packed battlements crimson-dotted. Walled towers rose solemn, banners whipping. Direwolf rampant alongside the Golden Rose. Horns sounded their approach. Gates opened. Maester Luwin's thin form appeared amid an honor guard of steel-clad spearmen. Beside him stood Lady Mage Mormont, her fur cloak speckled white. Jon swung down, clasping Luwin's forearms. "The wall?" he asked. 10 ravens have flown since dawn," Luwin said. "Bowen Marsh reports the dead test the gate nightly, but for now they're held. They need dragon glass, fire arrows, men, any breathing soul you can spare." He lowered his voice. "And there is trouble south. Bolton banners spotted near Dreadfort marshes. We fear he moves on Winterfell while you march. Only my letter turned you this way in time." Then attuned see. Jon turned to Galbart. "Garrison the wolves. We hold Winterfell to last man." Then he addressed Mage. "I need Bear Island's longboats to ferry men along the White Knife. If we're to reinforce Castle Black before the next full moon." The Bear Lady smirked. "My daughters already sail. You command, Bear Island obeys." Inside, the hall crackled with blazing hearths. Yet warmth did little to ease grim faces. Rickon Stark, larger now, greeted his half-brother with a shy grin, shaggy hair hiding half his face. Shaggy Dog, grown wild, sniffed at Longclaw but settled when Ghost lowered his head in amicable greeting. Sansa sat by the central hearth, eyes still haunted from her captivity but shining when she saw Jon. They embraced long, letting years of fear melt in a heartbeat. She whispered, "Robb wrote. He rides to River Run. Mother would be proud." Her voice broke. Jon hushed her, promising safety. Over her shoulder, he saw Theon Greyjoy linger near the shadows, guilt etched deeper by Last Hearth's news. Their nod held unresolved histories. That night Jon convened every northern lord within Winterfell's walls. Manderly of White Harbor, Tallheart of Torrhen's Square, Surin crippled but defiant, and the surviving sons of the Greyjon who'd been fostering with House Stout. Candlelight flickered across maps unrolled on the high table. Dragon glass stocks, wildfire casks smuggled from King's Landing by Sansa's loyal retainers, and iron ore shipments from the rills lined the margins like lifelines. Jon stood at the head wearing gray mail stitched with small silver roses, Margaery's sign woven into stark steel. "We war on 2 fronts," he began. "Winter marches with the dead. Bolton marches with treachery. We cannot fight both alone." He pointed south. "Robb meets Tywin near River Run within a fortnight. If Robb falters, lions pour north. If the wall falls, death pours south." His hand slammed the table. "So we choose. Ride for the wall to hold the gate, or hunt Bolton before he breaks our spine. But understand, without Bolton's head the phrase will strike. Without the wall all banners burn." Silence blanketed the hall. Lord Manderly stroked his beard. "We nation of old blood, ancient as winter. The dead are your first foe, boy." His gaze hardened. "But vengeance stews. Roose flays our kin and wears their skins. We cannot leave such evil alive." Jon inhaled, weighing. "Then I propose 2 fists. I ride north at dawn with every ranger willing. We reach Castle Black in 12 days. Lady Maeg, Lord Serwyn, the Tallhearts, and Sir Arlan's reach Bowman, accompany me. Lord Manderley with his fleet sails the White Knife to resupply the wall. The remaining bannermen strike east tonight. Hunt Bolton under Lord Greatjohn's eldest son, now Greatjohn in truth. When Roose falls, march to the wall with all haste. Mentional. Arguments sparked. Too few men for either front, risk of splitting strength, fear of fray involvement. Sansa stepped forward unexpectedly. Bolton thrives on fear, she said, voice trembling but strong. He sees our horror of flayed skin and wields it like a blade. Deny him that. Show mercy where he shows none. Save the realm before you bleed for vengeance. Eyes shimmered across the hall. Sansa, once captive and powerless, now spoke as a Stark of Winterfell, and her words tilted hearts. Consensus slowly coalesced. The wall first. The king's justice upon traitors second. Deep past midnight, Jon dismissed the lords. In the quiet that followed, he wandered to the Godswood, where the heart tree bled crimson sap onto snow. He knelt, ghost at his side, ring warm at his chest. Memories drifted, of Robb's voice on Harrenhal's battlements, of Margaery's laughter among rose hedges, of Sam's panicked tales of blue-eyed corpses. He prayed, not to old gods only, but to every god that might listen, for strength for dawn. Robb Stark watched morning mist coil above the Red Fork, banners drooping under drizzle. South of River Run, the river plain sprawled soggy and treacherous. Beyond it, Tywin Lannister's host glittered in patchwork camps, scarlet and gold mingling with black sellsword pennons. Zeega towers rose like stony fingers. Rams snorted smoke through patched holes. Robb's own encampment clustered beneath weeping willows, cavalry pickets hidden behind hedgerows. Queen Margaery stood beneath a silk awning, reading a letter just arrived by Hawke. Jon's account of Last Hearth. Her lips tightened, blue eyes flashing with grief. She folded the message carefully, tucking it under her breastplate. Dark tidings? Robb asked, voice low. Last Hearth has fallen. She murmured, the Greatjon is dead. Robb's shoulders slumped. He was a friend. Silence swallowed words. When he spoke again, it was iron. Then we end this here. The realm cannot abide 2 wars. Tywin dies today. He clasped Margaery's forearm. Stay behind the second ridge with the maesters. Should the line falter, ride for the river. Promise me. She did not flinch. I promise to ride where the wolf howls loudest. Robb half smiled. Resigned. As you will, my rose. Battle commenced at sunrise. Northern longbowmen hidden among reeds loosed volleys across the river, targeting Lannister artillery. At the same moment, Manderley's levies, shipped upriver overnight, stormed a ford miles east, drawing a chunk of Tywin's cavalry to respond. While the Lion's wings splintered, Robb's heavy horse, Umber survivors, led by the new Greatjon, crashed into Tywin's southern flank. Chaos erupted. War horns, braying trumpets, screams, drowning thunder of hooves. In the midst, Margaery directed medic caravans, her green cloak plainly visible to every archer assigned to guard her. She spurred between tides of wounded, soothing men with words of summer, amidst blood and mire. At midday, Robb met Tywin near a ruined sept, where shattered rose windows littered the ground. Grey wind leapt upon the Lion's banner guard, scattering pikemen. Robb dismounted, sword whistling, meeting Sir Kevan first, and felling him with a vicious riposte that broke through shield and shoulder. Tywin, grand in gilded armor, engaged Robb with measured fury. For long minutes, steel rang. Sparks, flashing, mud splashing as they circled. But age weighed. Grief fueled youth. Robb feinted high, slashed low across Tywin's knee, then pivoted and drove his winter steel blade through the gilded breast. A hush seemed to fall as Tywin slid to muddy ground, golden helm rolling. Lion banners wavered. Far lines buckled. When trumpets sounded Lannister retreat, Riders scattered in disorder toward the Westerlands. Cheers rose from northern throats, yet none exulted louder than the small folk freed of siege. Margaery found Robb kneeling beside Tywin's body. She touched his shoulder. "A debt paid," she whispered. Robb met her gaze, exhaustion, sorrow, yet relief. He motioned 2 captains to lift the corpse. "Prepare him for burial," he ordered softly. "A lion may be our foe, but the North keeps its honor." News of Tywin's death sped on raven wings. King's Landing erupted in turmoil as Cersei seized regency, executing dissenters. Frey and Bolton couriers turned pale, their plotted pincer broken. In Braavos, the Iron Bank named Robb creditor primary to Lannister debts, opening coffers long withheld. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen studied parchments and whispered, "2 heads of the dragon remain." And Jon's army reached the wall on the 9th day of forced march, a record none wished to break again. The ancient curtain of ice loomed stark against winter sky, its blue-white face glazed with new rime. At Castle Black, the gates groaned open. Gaunt rangers welcomed them, ice-rhyming beards, eyes sunken. Fires burned constant on ramparts, but a stink of charred flesh lingered. Bowen Marsh met Jon at the courtyard, embracing him despite aching ribs. "Twice they came last night," he rasped. "We lost 3 men at the east parapet. Fires held." He eyed the wagons full of firepots and obsidian with weary hope. "Praise the gods, and the queen who sent this bounty." Jon's forces integrated swiftly. Bear Island shield maidens took over south steps. Tallheart archers manned the west tower. Reach masons reinforced palisades with ironwood breakings. In the library granary, Sam coordinated dragonglass arrowheads, instructing smiths on patterns gleaned from dusty tomes. Jon himself walked every yard of walltop, long claw sheathed within arm's reach. Ghost shadowing his steps. He could feel something beyond the trees, an awareness, a cold thunder behind eyes unseen. On the 3rd night, snow fell thick. Torches sputtered in swirls of white, sentries huddled beneath heavy cloaks. Jon paced the south rampart above the main gate. Midnight bells echoed distant when Ghost stiffened, growling low and deep. Jon followed the direwolf's gaze north. Shapes moved within the tree line, tall, spindly silhouettes gliding between trunks as though weightless. Eyes like shards of captured starlight flickered. "Rouse the watch," Jon barked. Horns blew. Archers lined the wall, flames arcing into darkness. Dragonglass arrowheads hissed, striking whites lurching from shadows. They fell in smoking heaps, yet more advanced. Then the White Walkers emerged, pale armor glinting, spears of ice held like scepters. One raised a hand. Wind howled. Flames dimmed. Torches flickered. A wall of frost raced up the ice curtain, crystallizing stone support beams until they cracked. Men shouted. Jon dashed along the parapet, directing firepots to impact below. Wildfire splashed emerald fury across snow, lighting night with sickly glow. Whites shrieked as fire devoured them, collapsing like brittle statues. The walkers stepped back, unscathed, raising free hands. Shards of ice javelins shot skyward, smashing against the crenellations. A ranger fell screaming. Jon's heart hammered. Ancient training whispered, "Kill the lieutenants, break the horde." He scanned for any glint of obsidian near. Meg Mormont's daughter Lyanna, named for the dead Stark, stood clutching a barehead spear tipped with dragonglass. Jon beckoned. Together they climbed a roped ladder to the outer ledge. Below, a walker lifted its face, crown of icy horns catching wildfire light. Jon leapt. He landed hard in snow, rolling to soften impact. The walker turned. Spear stabbing. Jon parried with Longclaw. Valyrian steel met ice in a flash of blue sparks. Shock numbed his arm. Lyanna plunged her bear spear at the creature's side. It hissed, twisting. Blades clashed. Jon pivoted, driving his sword through the walker's neck. The steel sang, the being shattered, fragments of crystal spraying outward. In the same instant, Whites froze mid-charge, then collapsed as if strings cut. Silence fell, broken only by crackle of dying flames. Jon's breath plumed in the air. Above, cheers erupted. The remaining walkers withdrew into the forest, blue eyes flickering like dying lanterns. He looked up to see rangers lowering ropes to haul him back. Lyanna laughed breathlessly, wiping snow from her brow. "A dance fit for a bear," she said. That sunrise, Jon addressed the Night's Watch, and Northmen assembled in the courtyard. "Tonight we proved mortal will can stand against death," he told them, voice hoarse. "But we cannot stand alone. Ravens fly to every castle south. Stark, Tyrell, Tully, Martell, Baratheon, even Lannister if they will hear. The wall is not the North's shield only. It guards every hearth." He paused. "I pray my brother's counsel unites them. If it fails, then we hold anyway." He raised Longclaw. "As long as one wolf draws breath, winter will not conquer." Voices roared, a melding of vows old and new. Jon felt something shift. Hope, fragile but burning. At Riverrun, days after Tywin's fall, Robb convened the remnants of his council. Word of Jon's stand at the wall arrived, and of Bolton's flight eastward toward the Dreadfort with Frey allies. Sansa, now safe within Riverrun's stone, presented evidence. Correspondence seized from Ramsay, revealing plans to seize Winterfell once North forces thinned, offering the keep to Cersei, in exchange for legitimization as Warden of the North. Fury blazed in every northern heart. Margaery, eyes fierce, spoke first. "Treason still rots the realm. We end it now. One stroke." She proposed a triple invasion. Robb's cavalry to strike Moat Cailin, cutting the Dreadfort from southern aid. Manderly's fleet to blockade Flint's Finger, preventing Greyjoy reinforcement. And a swift raiding party led by herself and the Queen's Guard, composed of Reach Knights and loyal Umbers, to infiltrate the Dreadfort via subterranean crypt channels rumored beneath the flaying tower. She had quietly gathered maps from captured Frey scribes. Robb looked torn. "I swore I would keep you from peril." She met his eyes. "Your mother fought for her cubs. Your wife patched men on battlefields. The realm you and Jon fight for is mine too. Let me wield my own blade." She lifted a short sword with vine-etched guard. "A rose can prick more than fingers." Robb relented, appointing Sir Brynden Tully Blackfish to command forces around the castle, while he himself would ride with Mage Mormont and Greyjoy the Younger along the Wolfswood, harrying Bolton outriders. Together, they marched beneath storm-laden skies. Across the marshlands, Roose settled behind Dreadfort's curtain wall, flayed man banners flapping. Ramsay returned with Sansa's absence, rage twisting his smile. "We hold," Roose murmured, "until the snow drowns their resolve, then carve our vengeance." He did not anticipate roots of roses twisting under stone. Margaery's infiltration began under a new moon. A small craft rode silently up the weeping water, hull painted midnight green. Reach archers slipped over slick stones, coiling ropes down a forgotten culvert. Margaery followed last, breastplate darkened with lampblack. The tunnel stank of rot and old iron, walls lined with grotesque frescoes. They passed cells where flayed skins still hung, curling like parchment. Rage hardened in Margaery's gut. Within they emerged beneath the great hall, concealed by a hinged butcher's table used to drain victims. Ser Kai of the Thorn signaled. Bolton's feast in progress above. Guards half drunk, torches waning. Margaery adjusted her gauntlets. "For the North," she whispered. They burst through the hidden hatch, crossbows singing. Arrows felled guards before the first scream. Margaery strode across the blood-slick rushes, sword flashing, carving through Bolton men with economy learned on battlefields. Ramsay lunged at her, knives gleaming. She parried, pivoted, raked his arm with steel. He hissed, wild. They circled, dining tables overturned, half-eaten haunches slid to floor. Ramsay's grin stretched. "Pretty queen in my house," he crooned. "Shall I flay the petals first?" "No," a voice thundered. Robb Stark stormed through shattered doors, gray wind at his side. Margaery pressed her attack, Ramsay leapt back. Roose attempted to draw a dagger, but Greyjoy's son slammed him with a mace. Chaos exploded. Amid ferocious melee, Ramsay slashed Margaery's thigh, but her cuisses deflected. She countered, pommel striking his temple. He staggered. Grey wind lunged, teeth sinking into his sword arm. Ramsay shrieked. Robb finished him with a clean thrust beneath the breastbone. The bastard of Bolton fell, eyes wide, red mouth bubbling. Roose tried to flee through Servants' Passage. Margaery pursued, ignoring the sharp burn in her leg. She cornered him near the kennels. He raised blood-slick hands. "Mercy, your grace." "Mercy died at the Twins," she said, driving her blade through his throat. Dreadfort fell by dawn. The flayed man banner burned to ash, replaced by a direwolf entwined with summer rose. Northern prisoners staggered into daylight, tears freezing on cheeks. Margaery found Robb hauling ashes to a cart. "For Winterfell's fields," he said, "to remind new seeds of old blood." She grasped his soot-stained hand. Weeks later, Winterfell's courtyard brimmed with banners unseen together since Aegon's conquest. Direwolf, rose, trout, sun spear, moon and falcon, kraken, borne by Yara under flag of peace, and the black and white of the Night's Watch. Snow melted under early spring sun as the great council assembled. Robb Stark sat high on a throne of carved weirwood and ash, Margaery beside him crowned in two intertwined circlets, a wolf's head and a wreath of golden petals. Jon stood to Robb's right, armor still scuffed from wall skirmishes. His presence vital, though he'd ridden overnight to arrive. Ravens perched along beams overhead, as though old gods themselves leaned to listen. Samwell Tarly read a proclamation drafted by Grand Maester Tyrell and inked by Maester Luwin. A pact of mutual defense binding North, Reach, Riverlands, Dorne Vale, and Ironborn against the long night. Grain tariff-free to each holdfast aiding the watch. Obsidian mining rights to Dragonstone granted to the Night's Watch. And should the wall fall, each house pledged to send 1 in 10 of fighting age to the next defensive line along the neck. Debate followed, waves of argument cresting, crashing, receding. Lord Grafton feared economic ruin. Dornish envoys demanded redress for Oberyn's death. Yara insisted Ironborn autonomy over captured coasts. Jon stepped forward, cloak swirling. "I have looked into the eyes of death," he said, voice ringing off stone. "It cares nothing for coin, revenge, or seaborne raids. We squabble while darkness gathers. One realm or no realm. Choose." Silence, then cheers from Watch Brothers. Slowly lords rose, one by one, pledging swords, ships, flour. Sansa placed a white rose upon the table, a symbol of memory of their mother and of new peace. Even Lysa Arryn, coaxed from eerie hearths, assented through fitful tears. That afternoon, in the Godswood where snowdrops already dared bloom, Jon knelt before Robb. "Our father's dream was children safe in their beds," he said. "I cannot be both Warden of the North and Lord Commander at the Wall. I choose the Black once more. Though I am no longer a bastard, my watch is needed." He offered his sword. Robb's eyes glistened. "You led where kings faltered," he said. "But I accept your vow." He turned to the assembled council. "Hear me. Jon Stark, true-born son of Eddard and Lyanna, a Stark of ice and of fire, takes oath as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, with full rights of North and South behind him. May his brothers stand as one realm stands." Cheers rose, mingled with the clatter of direwolf and rose sigils. Margaery stepped forward, clasped Jon's shoulders. "A rose thorn defends root and petal," she whispered. "Carry my North." She pressed a fresh oak silver ring into his palm, twin to the one he already bore. Their eyes held. Farewell for now, promise for tomorrow. That evening, beneath torchlit archways, Jon prepared to ride. Sam attached raven scrolls to his saddle. Word to Dragonstone requesting dragonglass smelting. Word to Braavos negotiating iron loans. Word to Meereen, though no raven could fly so far, yet hope soared on wings unseen. Sansa embraced him. Rickon begging to go too. Jon tousled his brother's hair, promising hunting lessons once peace found them. Robb and Margaery stood last at Winterfell's gate, gray wind and ghosts touching noses as if sharing ancient secrets. Snow drifted but melted on Jon's gauntlet. He mounted, raising a gloved hand. Horns blared, gates opened. Black brothers and Northmen rode behind him, vanishing into swirling white. As hooves faded, Margaery leaned into Robb, voice barely a breath. Will they remember this night in songs? Robb wrapped his cloak around them both. If dawn comes, the songs will never end. He kissed her brow. Overhead, the first true star of evening flickered. A shard of silver promise glittering upon snow-capped towers, upon rose-gold ramparts, upon the hearts of those who dared dream an empire forged by wolf and rose might outlast even the long night. Ka. The ravens flew ahead of Jon's party like tatters of night itself. Silhouettes crossing a sky stained violet by a sun reluctant to rise. Ice groaned under hooves as the black-cloaked column wound west from Castle Black. Rangers, Northmen, Bear Island spearwives, tall-hard bowmen, and a guttering handful of recruits too raw to name their fears. Snow muffled every jangle of reins, every hiss of breath. Yet the march pulsed with low, urgent purpose. Each bootstep a heartbeat drumming against the ribs of a continent trying to remember it was still alive. Somewhere beyond the wind-swept flats, the dead remustered around their shattered commanders. Jon could feel the pressure of them, an unseen tide swelling in the hush that hangs before a storm. He allowed neither dread nor exhaustion to crease his face. By the second day out they reached the tumbling stones of Queen's Crown, long deserted, save for crows perched inside the tower's crown like ragged black jewels. There they found Tormund Giantsbane's banner lashed crooked atop a half-collapsed barn, white mammoth skull on blood-red hide. Tormund himself stood amid drifted ruins, hair wild as blizzard spindrift, greeting Jon with a belly-deep laugh that belied the worry in his eyes. He had brought 500 free folk. Hunters, spears, raiders, once sworn to Mance, but now bound to life itself. Fires crackled in snow hollows where wildlings roasted hare and shared oatcakes with watchmen, who only months earlier had sworn to gut them. The world turned strange when dead things walked. We lost a dozen at Long Barrow. Tormund said that night, voice roughened by smoke as he shared a skin of bitter birch sap liquor with Jon beside the campfire. Sparks snapped among blowing flakes, each ember a memory flaring, dying. Whites out of the dark like frost-brittle wolves? We burned them, but now we flint for nerves. He eyed Jon curiously. The little queen o' flowers truly shoved steel through the flayed man's throat. She did, Jon answered. Picture of Margaery's blade sliding home playing behind his eyes. The memory carried a warmth as fierce as grief. Roses in the north don't wilt easily. Tormund loosed another booming laugh. Slapped Jon's shoulder. Then we'll stand with your roses and your wolves both. Before dawn they pressed west again, following the White Knife's upper forks where the river split into fingers wrapped around boulder fields. The wind roared unceasing, flinging knives of ice that sliced through wool. Yet morale held, for Ghost padded at the head, white hope against white death, and ravens overhead carried word that Robb and Queen Margaery would soon depart Winterfell to strike south toward King's Landing and the Reach in triumph, leaving sturdy wardens to reinforce the great northern fortress line. The thought of Robb's banners stitched to the sunlit rose again, stirred the coldest blood. On the seventh day, they reached the gorge, a broken canyon carved ages past by glacial flood. Here, the ancient Nightfort Road diverged from the King's Road, bridging the gorge with arches of black basalt worn to jagged teeth. Scouts returning under the dusk banner reported movement, a slow blue glow threading the forest shadows beyond the far rim. Jon ordered the host to make camp under cover of ridge and ravine. He himself climbed the crumbling parapet with Tormund Lyanna Mormont and bow captain Hallis Hornwood. Through the spyglass the glow resolved into sinuous ranks of whites. Hundreds, maybe thousands, marshalling around four tall figures whose armor shone like frozen moonlight. These new lieutenants had no need for stealth. The dark itself was theirs. One raised a crystal horn. Jon's stomach nodded as a note like splintering glaciers drifted across the night. Low, resonant, ancient sorrow made sound. "They come," Lyanna murmured, fingers tightening on the dragonglass spear she'd named Balerion. "By morning." "Not if we go to them first," Jon said, mind racing across maps of passes, gullies, choke points. He envisioned fire trenches, crossfire arcs, avalanche triggers. Defiance made geometry. "We hold this bridge or winter will seep around us like floodwater." Tormund rumbled assent, calling for his first spear captains. Through the frigid night they worked. Bear Island women hacking pine trunks with short axes. Watch smiths scoring barrels of pitch. Free folk weaving nets of thorned willow. Rangers soak heavy ropes in lamp oil and strung them between basalt teeth to catch undead flesh. Mormont's women hammered iron spikes for caltrops. Jon walked every span, voice steady, praising each hand until frost-bitten cheeks flushed with renewed vigor. Ghost never left his heel, red eyes blazing lantern bright. False dawn silvered the world. Snow fell softer now. Hush before the scream. Jon stood mid-span, long claw drawn. Along each parapet, archers readied fire arrows wrapped in oil-soaked wool. Below the bridge, barrels bobbed in river ice, each stuffed with wildfire siphoned from secret caches at Winterfell. Tormund stationed giants, Mag the Mighty's kin who'd hitched to Jon at Hardhome. Along the slopes with sledges stacked in boulders ready to roll. Samwell Tarly, cheeks raw but eyes fierce, took position at the center cauldron to command dragonglass-tipped scorpions, built from cannibalized ballistae. Prayer mixed with cold breath, forming hoarfrost on mustached lips. When the pale host emerged from the timberline, the world seemed to exhale. Whites shuffled like silent surf, ice cracking beneath them. White wolves with teeth of ice loped among their feet. Above them, 4 white walkers rode skeletal elk, cold blue eyes fixed on the bridge. They did not hurry. Death has never known haste. Jon gave the signal. Horns cried. Savage freefolk horns, clarion watch horns. The mournful blast of Bear Island's conch. Flaming arrows arced against the dawn like meteors. They hit pitch-soaked nets strung across the roadway, igniting in curtains of green-orange light. White stumbled but pressed on, limbs aflame yet uncaring. Giants heaved boulders. Stones crashed, pulverizing bodies. Still, they advanced. Jon waded into the fray where the first rank reached the central span. Longclaw bit through dead flesh, severing arms that clawed for his throat. Beside him Lyanna stabbed with Balerion, each thrust erupting whites in puffs of frost. Ghost tore a walking corpse in half, mouth steaming, and leapt at the next. Tormund swung a double-bladed axe carved from weirwood root and black iron, laughing in face of oblivion. But the walkers were the storm's heart. One raised its icy sword toward the river. Frost raced along the channel, thickening ice until it buckled the barrels beneath the span. Another swept a spear through the air. Torch flames guttered, half of them dying. The third blew its horn once more, and rock slides meant for whites shivered, freezing mid-tumble before crumbling to powder. Jon fought his way to the central arch where the leader now stood, taller than any man, helm crowned with jagged quartz. Blue light poured from its eyes. He remembered Ygritte's laugh, his father's last words, Margaery's smile. He remembered that he was the fire to temper ice. He charged. Longclaw met Icesword in a clash that shook bone. Sparks of blue and silver cascaded. The blade rang like morning bells. The walker moved with preternatural grace. Parry, riposte, overhead cleave that would have split Jon from crown to groin had Hallis Hornwood not lunged, shield raised. The icy sword clove the wooden shield, but the moment's pause let Jon thrust. Valyrian steel sheared through plate and spine. The walker screamed, a shriek that tore blood from ears, then exploded into shards. Across the bridge, whites froze mid-charge, collapsed. Still, 2 walkers remained. Sam Scorpion launched a jet-black bolt of dragonglass that skewered the second through the torso. It shattered. The third turned to flee. Lyanna hurled her spear, Balerion, its obsidian head drilling between frozen vertebrae. Another shatter. Silence fell, except for crackling fires. Hundreds of wights lay broken, smoldering. Few men had fallen, though many bled or shivered near death. But victory still tasted of ashes to Jon. This skirmish was a mere finger of the true host. He ordered every body burned, every shard of walker blade gathered to be forged anew, and every man thanked by name. Through exhaustion he wrote ravens once more. To Winterfell, to River Run, to Dragonstone. He added a line for Margaery. Bridge held. Giantsbane sends kisses. I see dawn in your eyes. In King's Landing, dawn crept across blackened domes of the great sept of Baelor, its shattered pillars still jutting through rubble, where wildfire had roared months earlier. Queen Regent Cersei paced the Red Keep's Tower of the Hand, barefoot, floor cold. Tywin lay entombed beneath the sept's broken crypt. Joffrey rotted in marble. Tommen clutched his mother's hand like a drowning child. Trials and executions filled each dusk. Yet ravens whispered of Robb stark-crowned in River Run, and of white flames on the northern horizon. Panic coagulated into fury. You promised dragonfire, she hissed to Qyburn, who stood with candlelight dancing across stitched lips of some experiment. Blazing walls to keep wolves at bay. Dragons may yet return, he crooned. Our informants in Essos say a queen crosses the Dothraki Sea with 3 grown beasts, but the cost of her loyalty, I will pay anything. Her nails raked oak, gold, flesh, souls. Qyburn's eyes glittered. Then send word. Offer the throne's alliance. She craves legitimacy in Westeros. A Stark-Tyrell empire will deny her claim. Promise her all the reach if she burns the north. No. Cersei's gaze drifted to the window, where distant smoke from the city's slums ghosted upward. The reach belongs to roses and traitors, she murmured. Let it burn. And half a world away beneath orange sky, Daenerys Targaryen stroked Drogon's midnight scales as she surveyed freed villages outside Meereen. Barristan Selmy delivered the raven scroll bound in Lannister red. She unrolled it slowly, reading promises of alliances and oaths dripping honey. At its end, a postscript in a different hand. Your claim will be contested by a Wolf-Rose cabal. The North seeks crowns of its own. Robb Stark, she whispered. The young wolf, grown king. She remembered tales Viserys had spat by firelight. Of Ned Stark's honor. Of Lyanna stolen. Of a realm once bound by dragons and shattered by rebellion. She'd thought Stark dead. Now his line thrived and challenged her birthright. Yet another scrap of parchment. Stolen from a Braavosi envoy, listed Jon Snow, Lord Commander, rumored son of Lyanna and Rhaegar. If that were true, he too carried Targaryen blood. Her eyes lifted to her dragons wheeling overhead, a storm of wings black, gold, cream. She envisioned dragons above a wall of ice, scorching the dead. Destiny forked. Summon Tyrion, she said. And Varys. We sail sooner than planned. Ow. At Winterfell, spring clawed through snow. Margaery walked through glasshouses humming with bees, instructing young gardeners to graft northern crabapple onto Reach pear. Hope made horticulture. Letters from Jon arrived weekly, each stained by ash and frost. She read them at dawn on the battlements, heart swelling. Robb prepared to ride south with a composite host. North Lords, Reach heavy horse, Riverland levies, Stormlanders newly defected after Stannis' quiet coup on Dragonstone. Their banner now displayed direwolf, rose and fiery heart, pierced by stag's antler. Stannis' heraldry modified to show fealty, but maintained sovereignty. One evening as sunset bled crimson upon the Godswood's melting snows, Robb knelt before Margaery in the heart tree's scarlet silence. War may drive south again, he said, but winter's bite lingers. The realm needs hearth fires burning. Will you stay and rule Winterfell while I am gone? Sansa shall counsel you. Margaery shook her head. I swore to ride where the wolf howls. You will need supplies lines, healers, stable harvest. I ride halfway, then part south to gather reach fleets at White Harbor. When you push to King's Landing, grain ships will meet you at Maidenpool. She watched a leaf drift into a pool of meltwater. A realm is not won by swords alone. It is watered by bread. Bah. Robb smiled, brushed a curl from her cheek. Then bread and swords shall be won. Endo. Jon's host, reinforced by thousands of Northmen marching from Bolton-liberated lands, returned to Castle Black with grim trophies. Ice shards repurposed into spear points, walker horns lashed to pikes. Bowen Marsh wept upon seeing them, a symbol that the ancient foe could be slain. Yet wounded morale soared only briefly. Scouts from Eastwatch staggered through the gate carrying news of a vast force breaching the shivering sea's pack ice, riding dead horses frozen solid, driving mammoths whose tusks dripped frost. Eastwatch had fallen. The enemy marched down coastlines, circumventing the wall. Jon assembled war council on the King's Road within reach of the Gifts farms. Tormund argued for guerrilla pursuit, Lyanna for stiff defense at Moat Cailin. Sam urged diplomatic requests for Dragonfire. Consensus: hold choke points south of the Gift, send fast riders to warn every hamlet, dredge the ancient caches of obsidian buried beneath Hardhome. Jon dispatched the swiftest ravens yet, one to Daenerys Targaryen via Volantis Relay, bearing humble plea for alliance. No pride can stand between life and death. He wrote, dragons were born to end this night. Endel. The first meeting of dragon and wolf occurred upon a flat knoll known in wildling tongue as Sky Talons, a day's march south of the Frostfang foothills. Jon arrived with 200 rangers, armor plain, eyes weary. Daenerys descended from Drogon's back, shrouded in black leathers, silver hair flung by high winds. Behind her strode Missandei, Grey Worm, the Red Priestess Kinvara, and Tyrion Lannister pale beneath the Targaryen banner. Snow flurried. Drogon's breath steamed like a forge. Ghost crept forward, hackles half raised yet curious. Drogon's golden eyes watched the direwolf with ancient cunning. Jon bowed. Your Grace. Daenerys studied him, the scars at his throat, the quiet storm behind gray eyes. Your words spoke of winter, Lord Commander. Winter stands here. She gestured to the wall distant. Show me. They did. 2 days later, she soared above the shattered Eastwatch. Below, Javik red wolves and watch survivors burning corpse mounds. Drogon roared. Viserion and Rhaegal answered, plunging into undead ranks along coastline, baking them to ash. Yet from the mists north, a spear of blue-white flame lanced upward, striking Rhaegal's left wing. Ice forged from death's breath. The dragon staggered but did not fall. Daenerys tasted fear like copper. On the high ramparts at Castle Black that night, she and Jon spoke alone beside a brazier. Sparks drifted upward to join the stars. Jon recounted Lyanna Rhaegar, whispers of bloodlines, his own doubts. Daenerys shared visions of House of the Undying, thrones of snow. They spoke of duty, burdens, and of children yet unborn. When Ghost pressed his head under Daenerys' hand, Jon realized ghosts recognized kindred souls. We need your dragons, he said simply. Not for a crown but for dawn. They are yours, she answered, surprising them both. Late summer thunderhead swelled above the neck as Robb's grand host advanced. 20,000 spears, 10,000 heavy horse, columns of crossbowmen escorted by armored wagons, laden with grain and ballistae. Margaery rode at the front of the supply train, sharing salt beef with foot soldiers, reciting Reach proverbs that coaxed laughter. Sansa oversaw camps. Her authority gentle but absolute. Arya Stark appeared one dawn in gray leathers, face half-shadowed, leading a pack of silent men who called themselves no ones, but answered to a direwolf's howl. Robb embraced her, wept. In the Reach, Highgarden's rose banners unfurled over ships newly christened sun spears, laden with lemon, grain, and mounted scorpions. The fleet sailed north along the coast, meeting Manderley war galleys at Seaguard, forming an unstoppable chain of supply. Ahead lay Harrenhal once again, now seat of the Great Council of the Living, where representatives from every house great and small gathered to forge the Pact of Dawn. Dorne promised sandsteeds and copper. The Ironborn offered swift longships in exchange for open trade. Even minor houses like House Rain, thought extinct, sent envoys pledging coin. Over 40,000 signatures sealed wax on the pact. Cheers shook the Widow's Tower. At its heart, a clause binding any future king or queen to stand vigil at the wall for a fortnight each decade, lest memory fade. And then, autumn's first orangeness painted the wall when the Night King appeared, taller than the others, armor of night glass spangled with stars. He stepped across the frozen bay east of Mole's Town, leading an army so vast its march throbbed like heartbeat in the ground. Above his head flickered the eruptive blue corona of a new forged terror, a dead dragon, wings tattered yet mighty, eyes blazing sapphire. Viserion, stolen during an earlier raid when Daenerys' outrider patrol faltered, had been turned, reforged by ice sorcery. The Night King sat astride the beast, promising winter everlasting. Jon and Daenerys stood on the wall's pinnacle, wind roping hair across their faces. They shared a nod, no time for more. Drogon and Rhaegal launched, shadow eclipsing moon. Behind, scorpions loaded with dragonglass bolts pivoted. Ghost howled. Armies braced. Battle of Ice and Dawn began. Viserion dived, spewing torrents of crystal flame that froze stone to glass. Rhaegal met him mid-air, talons raking. Shards sprayed, shards that became knives in the gloom. Drogon banked, releasing tides of seething red across undead legions, carving trenches where fire met hoarfrost. On the ground, free folk and Northmen joined sand skirmishers from Dorne. Braavosi cell sails turned infantry, Vale Knights in shining silver. Lighting cauldrons hissed, sending hazy glare across snow. Scorpion crews loosed, bolts streaked, two striking Viserion's thinned membrane, but failing to pierce bone. Screams of men and creature intermingled, a chorus older than written word. The Night King slipped from the undead dragons back onto the wall's parapet, blades of pure darkness swirling from palms. Jon rushed to meet him, Longclaw shimmering in starlight. Their swords collided, a sound like cracking worlds. Frost spiderwebbed down Valyrian steel. Jon's hands numbed, but he forced might, pivoted, trying to sweep. The Night King parried easily, riposted with slash that hissed across Jon's mail, slicing links but not flesh. Each blow hammered stone, snow, invisible bombs. Then Daenerys landed Drogon behind the Night King, leaping with dragonglass spear aflame. Kinvaris enchantments flickered along its length. She thrust. Ice swords whirled, shattering the spearhead to obsidian dust. But in that instant Jon found purchase. Longclaw downstroke severed the Night King's gauntlet clean, exposing ancient flesh. Drogon roared, bathing them all in fire. Jon tackled Daenerys behind scorched crenellations. Flames engulfed the Night King. When the blaze cleared, the Night King still stood, charred yet rising blue. But his gauntlet was gone, and where skin touched Valyrian steel, it smoldered black. He staggered. Jon recognized the first emotion on that ageless face. Doubt. Rhaegal slammed into Viserion mid-sky, clamping jaw around necrotic throat. At ground, Lyanna and Tormund rallied men to push undead over the edge. Trebuchets hurled barrels of wildfire. Arrowstorms rained. Samwell, bleeding from a gash at his brow, directed pyromancers to ignite trenches, forming a burning serpent along the wall's base. Jon advanced again, joined now by Arya darting from shadow. Valyrian dagger gripped reverse. She flanked left while he engaged head-on. The Night King spun, parried Jon. But Arya sprang, knife to throat. Cold hand caught her wrist. Jon feinted, dropping low, sweeping Night King's legs. They toppled. Arya twisted free. Jon drove Longclaw through chest. A screech like glaciers birthing ripped the night. The Night King's body fissured, blue radiance strobed, then shattered into a storm of snow dust. Across the battlefield, whites collapsed lifeless. Viserion faltered mid-air, undead eyes dimming. Rhaegal tore free, sending corpse dragons spiraling into the sea where ice devoured it. Silence thundered. A pale dawn crept behind broken clouds. Men wept. Wildlings pounded chests. Dornish sang halting songs. Jon pulled Arya close, then Daenerys. Drogon landed, nuzzling them. Warm breath, melting frost. Oh. Weeks bled into quiet reconstruction. The wall stood paradoxically stronger, its breaches patched with fused dragon glass and hardened fire bricks. Watch brothers accepted free folk into their ranks, now bound by shared graves. Field pyres still dotted the horizon, burning last remnants. Survivors marked a new calendar, year zero of the Dawn Accord. In early spring, the banners of every realm fluttered above Winterfell's newly risen council keep. Direwolf, Rose, Dragon, Trout, Sunspear, Crescent Moon. Kraken. Stagheart. Robb returned, crown nicked from Hammerstroke, to sign with Daenerys and Jon a charter declaring the Realm of Thrones a tripartite protectorate. No single monarch would again rule all. Instead, North, South, and Dragon crown lands would share defense, trade, and seats on the Dawn Council. Jon accepted the title Lord Marshal of the Wall, answerable to no king save collective will. Daenerys forged a new capital at Dragonstone, promising reconstruction of war-torn Stormlands. Robb and Margaery would seat at Harrenhal, its melted black stone now carved into shining pillars by Tyrell masons, the Court of Unity named Dawnhold. There they gathered one last night beneath an open roof where stars blistered the velvet dark. Torches flickered among marble benches. Wine flowed, arbor gold, Dornish red, northern blackberry mead. Songs soared, bards from Bravos, flutes from the Summer Isles, Bear Island drummers pounding hearts. Children darted between pillars. Rickon chasing Princess Shireen's cat. A Tyrell cousin teaching wildling babes to braid rose wreaths. Arya whispered with faceless men near a shadowed column. Sansa danced with Edric Dane under silver banners. Jon and Margaery met upon a terrace fragrant with night violet. She wore gray and green, diadems simple. He wore black scaled leather, silver rose pinned above heart. Words were scarce. Their eyes spoke hours. When she laid her hand over his ring, they heard only one another's hearts. "The wall still calls," he said softly, "but you own every beat beneath its snow, and you every bloom in my winter." She replied. She kissed him where moonlight touched. Robb approached, crown tucked beneath arm, laughing. "I see treaties sealed." He drew them into embrace. "Tonight we are not kings or wardens or marshals. We are Starks and friends who saw dawn." As horizon paled, Jon climbed a stair to address the gathering. Torches guttered, leaving only starlight. He spoke of those who lay beneath frost, of children spared shadows, of walls both of stone and of fear torn down. He ended thus: "Our songs may fade, our banners fray, but remember this night when winter bowed to fire and to heart. Remember that no wall stands higher than the courage of the living joined as one. And if dark rises again, we will answer. Not north alone, not south alone, but all realms under the same rising sun." Cheers thundered. Dragons above loosed triumphant roars, wings catching first blush of sunrise. Roses in courtyard beds unfurled petals warmed by dawn. Snowdrops sparkled along their edges, neither smothered nor wilted, but coexisting in fragile harmony. Wolf and rose, ice and fire. Ghost padded onto the parapet, fur glowing gold, and raised his muzzle skyward. Gray wind answered from garden lawn. In the east, the sun climbed clean and brilliant, spilling light upon dawn-forged empire. And for the first time in generations, the world believed it might endure. Spring did not so much arrive in the Northlands as creep, a shy creature edging from the trees one lap of sunshine at a time. Snow still pocketed the dells. Frost still limbed the tall spears of grass, but slushy rivulets trickled through Winterfell's inner yard, and new buds glimmered along the apple saplings in the glasshouses. Queen Margaery had coaxed to life. By day, a mild haze of warmth hovered above the ramparts. By night, mists curled off the steaming baths, once more open to wounded veterans. Songs floated through corridors, raw-throated black brothers mumbling the Bear and the Maiden Fair. Dornish sand spearmen strumming odd seven-stringed lutes, Reach seamstresses humming lullabies, while threading banners for a realm being sown anew. Hope proved clangorous, unruly, impossible to silence. Yet beneath that fragile calm churned labor. No bard dared rhyme. Twice a week, Lord Marshal Jon Stark convened councils within the new Tower of Dawn. Its circular chamber hung with rings. Outermost, the united sigils of 7 realms. Inside that, the symbols of every free folk clan. Innermost, a plain circle of unworked dragonglass representing the Night's Watch. Around a broad oak table, gouged with old sword scars, now rubbed smooth. Rangers reported each fresh warg dream. Maesters recited tallies of obsidian stores. Wildling elders voiced the restless murmurs of their kin. Jon listened, nodding. Tattoos of ice still etched across memory each time the name Eastwatch surfaced. Each time a raven arrived noting corpses not yet burned along the shivering sea. He ended such meetings with relentless assignment of forts to restore, caches to uncover, outriders to recruit. No one left his presence idle. When those councils ended, he crossed the yard to stand on the battlements with Queen Margaery, who no longer dressed in bright rose silks, but in a muted riding jacket of green-dyed deskin, trimmed in white rabbit fur. They would lean shoulder against shoulder and study the long, slow melt. She told him small things. How sapling grafts took root, how young Rickon had begun tutoring with Maester Luwin, how the new glass foundry's first panes came out unmarred. He in turn told her of rangers glimpsing pale shapes through Hearttree Grove, of scorpions restrung with Valyrian steel cable, of how Giant Mag the Mighty's cousins had hauled fresh blocks of granite down from the Frostfangs to buttress Castle Black's rebuilt eastern wall. These exchanges were seldom more than a dozen words each, yet they nourished him as surely as bread. On the 15th day of the new calendar, a calendar already dubbed the Dawn Reckoning, Daenerys rode through Wintertown beneath banners, stitched with 3 dragons wreathed by a circle of sunburst thorns. She brought a column of unsullied and polished copper scale, 200 Dothraki blood riders, 7 wagons of citron wood coffers, filled with dragonglass arrowheads, and perhaps most important of all, 3 war engineers from Volantis, who claimed the secret to casting scorpion bolts, clad in a thin glassy shell that shattered on impact to litter foes with shards. Drogon, Rhaegal, and the wounded but healing Rhaegal's twin, whose wing was now bound with giant sinew and fine mesh chain, circled high overhead casting titanic shadows. Winterfell's walls trembled under the downdraft each time one landed in the outer yard. She strode straight to the Tower of Dawn and clasped Jon's forearms, not as supplicant nor conqueror, but as equal. "The seas ride white with storm," she said without preamble, her voice pitched for counsel, not spectacle. "Ships of Qarth cruise near Ashai, dark sails we do not know. My freed cities call for aid while I am here. Yet if I return east now, the dead may gather once more in my absence. I would pledge myself to the north for 1 year, a dragon's year, as Valyrians say, to see the wall not merely mended but born anew." And no. Jon regarded her, thought of long treks south for Bran's naming day he had missed, thought of Sansa's quill scoring parchments deeper than half the swords he had swung. 1 year, he echoed, to finish what our fathers could not begin. He folded her forearm to his chest. Sealing packed. Maesters recorded the pledge in ink of crushed blueberries. Ravens carried duplicates to Dawnhold, to River Run, to Dragonstone. That very night, a feast spilled through Winterfell's rebuilt Great Hall. Long tables shuddered under boiled hare, buttered turnips, flatbreads drizzled with honey, and sand-dusted lemons shipped by Manderley galley from Sunspear. Stannis Baratheon, his pride thawing by increments, raised cups with Olenna Tyrell, whose wit danced around him like rapier jabs. Yara Greyjoy traded naval jests with Gendry Waters, now legitimized as Baratheon of Storm's End, Samwell Tarly near-choked telling Daenerys of his father's fiery fate, only to blink as she clutched his hand and murmured regret. Even Lysa Arryn, coaxed from the eyrie by Sansa's patient letters, managed a thin smile while conversing with Lady Stoneheart. Catelyn's revenant soul eased at last by dawnlight, half living still, but at peace enough to sip wine through pale lips. As lutes warbled and giants danced heavy-footed jigs, Jon slipped away to the ramparts, ghost padding silent at heel. The moon flattened into a half-coin above the weirwood grove. Clouds raveled across its face, then parted. He breathed the cold and allowed at last a measure of weariness to seep into bone. Soft footsteps joined him. Margaery's, though she said nothing. She linked her gloved fingers through his. They stood until their breaths drifted into one mingled plume, until distant drums stilled, until only river ice cracked and ravens croaked drowsy protests under eaves. He finally spoke. "When I rode from Harrenhal, I thought to carry winter within forever. I thought the crown's counsel a luxury we could ill afford. And now?" she asked. "Now I see there is no victory without sowing gardens." He turned to her. "But I fear to take root. Fear if I plant myself, the winds will shift and freeze the seed before it flowers." Margaery tipped his chin with 2 fingers. "Wolves run, roses root. Yet both survive storms. Plant when you can, run when you must. I will wait among the roots and meet you on the ridge." He kissed her then, quietly fierce. As beyond the far woods, something ancient and wounded howled, but did not cross the line of carved weirwood spears the free folk had raised. In Dao, high summer of year 1 dawn reckoning found 3 great works rising along the wall. At Eastwatch Reborn, Volantene engineers fused volcanic sand into obsidian glass veranda shields that refracted sunlight into focused beams against anything approaching the bay. At Queensgate, rivulets of molten dragon glass were poured into molds lining the inner curtain, forming ribs of black crystal that would never fracture to ice. And at Castle Black, dainty compared to its siblings yet central to them all, masons from Old Town set endless tiers of new stone buttresses, cannibalizing broken chunks of the old arch and mixing lime with dragonfire-slaked water to harden into a luminous onyx mortar. Overseeing it all stood Daenerys and Jon side by side, reading lists, arguing placements, occasionally sparring wooden swords to relieve tension, and whenever sun climbed highest, sharing quiet tea in a chamber half-hued from the ice, walls aglow sapphire. Into this industrious hush rode Arya with news of shadows across sea. From the stepstones she'd followed whispers of a war company known as the Shrouded Hand, corsairs wearing silver masks of children's faces, sailing black-hulled dramans. They preyed on Korth merchant lanes, took no prisoners, left entire crews posed on decks like marionettes, throats stitched with sea silk thread, and on their stern flew a banner. Stylized kraken wound around a starburst of 9 arms. Old tales named it Glyph of the Drowned Star, a forgotten cult of dead speakers exiled from Yi. But Arya's own eyes watched masked captains tilt their heads to the North Star before boarding. She felt winter's breath even there. Jon summoned war council on the spot. Gendry, now master of ships by King Robb's hand, proposed dispatching Baratheon longships. Yara Greyjoy insisted Ironborn reavers would gut any eastern pretender. Daenerys considered sending dragons but feared them lured far from the wall. In the end, a compromise. A mixed flotilla, the Dawn Fleet, under Gendry and Yara, half Ironborn swift keels, half Stormlander roundships, with 1 Dothraki blood banner of riders, ready to land upon stepstone beaches. Arya herself would infiltrate the Hand aboard a Braavosi cog, dagger of pale fire hidden in boot, and Jon pledged Ghost, white silent sentinel on the prow of Gendry's flagship Stormspear, to sense the unnatural. They sailed within a fortnight, hulls gliding from White Harbor as crowds sang a new ballad. The Call of Dawn. Their banners glowed with fresh paint. Direwolf, Hammerstag, Kraken silhouette, and a single silver rose, Margaery's secret gesture, embroidered by her hand on Yara's personal pennant. Masts dwindled over the horizon, leaving Winterfell strangely hushed. Through late summer, Jon and Daenerys oversaw the raising of 3 watch-sky spires. Tall, slender pylons sunk into the ice ridge behind Castle Black, each capped by a mirror dish of beaten Valyrian steel. Maester Caliot of Sunspear perfected lenses that could focus reflected dragonfire along a mile-distant line. Sam named the spires Dawn Eyes. Test shots vaporized frost ogres reanimated by the Watch for training. The beam also felled a pine the width of a bull's shoulders. Impressed, Daenerys allowed herself a rare grin, teeth glinting. Yet even as labor thrummed, ravens sent from Sansa predicted gathering tensions south. In King's Landing, Cersei had unleashed a new inquisition known as the Crimson Harvesters, war orphans trained in fanatical devotion to the Iron Throne, outfitted in blood-red lacquered armor reminiscent of Lannister hue yet bearing no sigil. Led by Qyburn's surgically augmented giant, Sir Robert Strong, they scoured the Crownlands for wolves, roses, and serpents. Farmers whispering of dawn accord vanished. Septons preaching unity found pulpits burned. Grain ships to King's Landing mysteriously vanished along the Blackwater. Rumors told of bribes from Braavosi bankers who now feared a stable Westeros would repay loans early, draining interest. Robb would not let such atrocities pass, but he lacked cause to march so soon after forging realm peace. Instead, he dispatched a diplomatic mission. Sansa Stark, Olenna Tyrell, and Maester Luwin, a subtle triad of steel under velvet, escorted by Sir Podrick Payne, whose rising legend as almost knight now true won hearts wherever he trod. Their goal: treat with Cersei, present formal petitions, demonstrate good faith. Secretly, a second objective: assess the mental state of the Queen Regent, rumored to teeter between mania and despair. Their progress south brimmed with tension. Charred hamlets, silent villages, crimson harvesters flickering at edges of forest. In Sow's Horn, they found harvest wagons overturned, grain spoiled with quicklime, a deliberate choice to starve. Olenna typed furious notes. Sansa comforted children with small loaves. Luwin recorded accounts. At Maidenpool, Sir Podrick foiled an assassin disguised as stableboy. His blade work left 2 harvesters bleeding in the mud. When finally they reached King's Landing, its walls bristled with scorpion heads repurposed from Joffrey's reign. But behind them black smoke curled from Flea Bottom. They petitioned audience for 9 days. On the 10th, Qyburn emerged, face placid, to declare her grace would grant meeting, but only the Lady Sansa may enter. Alone. Olenna hissed. Luwin advised caution. Sansa stood tall, tully red hair braided into a crown, and said she would go. Podrick insisted on a hidden blade sewn in her sleeve. Olenna pressed a vial of pale green liquid, essence of nightshade, in her glove. Sansa smiled faintly, accepted both. The Red Keep corridors smelled of dust and candle wax and something metallic beneath. Sansa's guarded escort guided her to the throne room, now retiled in red marble, Lannister lions carved across dais steps. Cersei lounged on the Iron Throne, crown crooked, goblet sloshing dark red. Beside her loomed Sir Robert Strong, visor down. Qyburn hovered like a shadow. Petyr Baelish was nowhere to be seen, last rumored slinking through Pentos, chased by Braavosi collectors. Cersei welcomed Sansa with a smile scrawled in wine. "Sweet dove," she cooed. "How the icy north sends lamb to lion's den." Sansa bowed, voice steady but heart drumming. They parried words. Cersei demanded hostages. Sansa offered grain. Cersei demanded dragon skull tribute. Sansa spoke of joint patrols against resurgent pirates. But the queen grew unhinged, laughter cracking into shrieks as she accused Sansa of poisoning Joffrey, of seducing the realm's hearts, of plotting with witches. At last she slurred, "I will send you back north with your tongue nailed to a box." Sir Robert Strong took one step forward. Sansa's hand brushed her gown's seam, fingers brushing dagger handle. Before steel flashed, the throne room doors flew open. Olenna strode through unannounced, cane clacking. "You spineless sow," she barked. "My granddaughter sits a queen at Dawnhold, while you suck dregs from bent wildfire." Behind her filed Last Tyrell, recovered from Dragonstone dungeons, armored in New Queen's guard livery of white rose on gray. He held a sealed scroll bearing the Braavosi iron sigil. Olenna smacked it upon the dais. "The Iron Bank calls all your loans. Pay now or lose city to wolves and dragons both." Cersei's face drained. She hurled her goblet at Olenna. It clanged harmless. She screamed orders, but guards hesitated. Few men remain loyal when coin dries. Into that hush came Maester Luwin's steady tone. "By charter of the Dawn Accord, you stand in breach of realm security and humanitarian law. You will abdicate regency, CD throne, to rightful Tommen under stewardship of the council until grown." Bah! Cersei rose, hair like wild straw. Wall. "I am the law." She gestured to Robert Strong. But Loras stepped forward, white cloak flaring, blade crossing Strong's path. Tyrion Lannister, unexpected. Half the realm thought in Meereen. Stepped from behind a pillar, now hand to Queen Daenerys. He addressed his sister. "It ends, Cersei." His voice broke. "No more children sacrificed to your fears." That night, the Red Keep changed hands without a siege. Lannister officers accepted Tyrell coin. Small folk opened gates. Cersei was escorted to chambers under gentle but unyielding guard. Qyburn vanished into catacombs. Sir Robert Strong, revealed at last as grotesque remnant of Gregor Clegane, collapsed when Qyburn's sigil brand burned away in meltdown. Some said Tyrion wept at the sight, others that he looked away. King Tommen, sweet and bewildered, embraced Sansa and asked if kittens like snow. The Council of Regents, Olenna, Luwin, Sir Davos, representing Stannis, and a Myrish representative for Essos Islanders, took oath to govern until Tommen's majority. Sansa politely refused seat, citing duties north. All of this recorded by scribes, witnessed by thousands. Ravens flew, blackening skies. Il-Ka. On the stepstones, sea spray stung iron cheeks as Yara guided Stormspare into a maze of reefs. Arya concealed among rigging, scanned for black-hulled shrouded handships. The evening sun bled orange ribbons across water. Suddenly, Ghost Low growled from bow. A hush followed, and the sea ahead rippled wrong, as though an invisible oar parted it. Then 3 Dromons surfaced from mist. Hulls greased so black, they reflected nothing. Masked figures lined rails. Each mask, silver child's face, eyes hollow voids. Beneath their feet, the deck planks pulsed faint blue. Gendry barked orders. Ballistae cranked. Ironborn reavers clambered rigging, axes ready. The Dromons altered not course nor speed, until their prows parted to reveal long gargoyle jaws, from which poured ribbons of pale, glimmering water that hissed upon contact with sea, turning immediate patch to ice. The water kept flowing in arcing jets, freezing into lances that skewered a nearby Stormlander galley mid-turn. The galley shuddered, deck frosted, masts cracking. Yara spat. Sorcery. She steered wide. Gendry's flagship matched. Barrels of dragonfire were hauled and lit. On command, sailors heaved them into the path of approaching jets. The barrels erupted, green flame melting ice, wreathing prow monsters in vapor. Yet the masked figures chanted, voices high, words foreign. Under their feet blue runes glowed, feeding new ice. Arya slipped over railing, water walking on quiet skiff, hugging Drummond Hull's shadow. She scaled anchor chain, silent as falling ash. On deck, she weaved between chanting ranks. At 4, stood 3 tall figures in unchecked silver masks streaked crimson, each holding knives of cloudy crystal. Overhead masthead carved like starfish with too many arms writhed slightly, as though alive. Arya felt unnatural cold radiating. She darted behind the central speaker. Slit throat through mask seam. Blood spilled black, sizzling. 3 ranks shrieked. Chanting faltered. Jets weakened. Ghost leapt across gap onto deck, white fury slashing. Reavers followed. Gendry swung hammer, shattering ice blades. Yara fought twin axes. In minutes, deck claimed by Dawnfleet. Masked sailors fell screaming, flesh smoking where iron touched. Beneath hatches, they discovered heartroom, black pit where infant hearts of various species floated in vials, feeding lattice of silver tubing to hull. No quarter given. Barrels of wildfire lowered, heartroom consumed in emerald maelstrom. Other Dromans turned to flee. Stormspare gave chase. By dawn, the shrouded hand lay at bottom of strait, waters steaming. Arya kept one mask, evidence, and a journal of quills drawn in rune strokes like stars. Gendry offered reward. She waved aside. North needs secrets, she said. Ghost sniffed the mask, whined. Something of winter's echo lingered. Ravens carried news home. Pirate scourge ended, stepstones free. But journal pages hinted darkest riddle. Promise of a moon's tear. A shard of meteor said to raise armies of ice in any age. Last recorded owners. Priests of the drowned star, fallen at Blackstone Isle far east of great empire of Yeti. Arya studied runes long into nights, eyes hard. Calm. While seas calmed. Storms brewed along faith lines. The High Septon, once humble shepherd now enthroned in King's Landing sept rebuilt by Tyrell donations, declared the Dawn Accord holy miracle, but extremist splinters, the sparrows triumphant, decried union with heathen myths, citing dragons unnatural. Free folk ungodly. They roamed Riverlands, burning watch outposts. Robb responded not with steel, but with voices. Quills of Memory, an order of traveling scribes sponsored by Sansa and Sam, recounting witness of undead war, gifting smallfolk children painted stones carved with direwolf and rose. Slowly fear abated, yet not all. In Bravos, bank ledgers tallied fortunes shifting. With Cersei dethroned, loans to Iron Throne under restructure, credit lines to Dawn Council soared. But hidden among marble chambers, a tall bald figure, once faceless now rogue, unmasked himself to leaders. Jaqen Har. A debt unpaid, he declared. One death to claim. Bran Stark, rumored three-eyed raven, lifeline of mankind's memory. The Braavosi elders balked, believing Bran under many-faced God's price for interfering with fate. They authorized covert contract. At Last Hearth, Bran Stark, pale, eyes too old, wandered charred hall where father's banner once hung, accompanied by Mira Reed and a dozen children of the forest now openly allied. Ravens perched on his shoulders, whispering times yet to come. One night he received vision. A man of no face wearing coin of iron, footfalls silent as snowfall, approaching through corridors. Bran raised a withered finger. Weirwood roots beneath stone trembled. The hall shifted like living thing, swallowing intruder in sudden crevice. When dawn came, only an iron coin lay on floor. Bran wept for the man that might have been, then sent Raven to Arya. Tell many-faced God I serve memory. Hey. The second autumn of dawn reckoning dawned bright, crisp, dot-eyed. Spangled frost returned along wall but sunlight lingered. At Castle Black, Jon convened final muster for year one. Free folk now wore black cloaks beside watch veterans. On banners, the direwolf and dragonglass mooncrest of the watch interlocked. Giants had built stone cairns for each fallen. Children played among them, stringing bright autumn leaves around horns. Dragons perched in sky from time to time, but mostly roosted at Dragonmont, whence Daenerys' new smelting project forged dragonglass steel, a hybrid metal of lighter weight, deadlier cut. Margaery arrived on mid-harvest's final day, astride a white fell pony. She bore parchments, grain tallies soared, new roads completed, Harrenhal's first annual living market scheduled. The realm thrived. Jon greeted her by Godswood, pressed forehead to hers. They walked under bleeding leaves. She spoke of gardens, he of watch posts. At length she stopped near Hearttree, laid hand on his. Winter wanes, she whispered. Will you finally plant root? He met her eyes. I would, if the wall stands without me. It will, said Sam, stepping from behind a birch, records in hand. With or without Lord Marshal. These numbers show surplus garrisons. He smiled. Awkward. We can spare a Stark. Jon exhaled, weight lifting like a cloak. Ghost nudged him. Bear Island Lyanna nodded. Tormund roared. Even giants know a man needs hearth. Dragons overhead beat wings in silent applause. Thus, after seasons of war, Jon Stark resigned his command. In solemn ceremony he unbuckled black cloak, folded it upon the anvil where Oathkeeper and Widow's Wail had been reforged into Night's Torch. A single massive blade of Valyrian obsidian alloy. Bowen Marsh bestowed him title Lord Protector of Northmarch. Daenerys placed her palm on his chest, whispering Valyrian benediction. Sam wept. Free folk howled. 2 weeks later, Winterfell's ancient septi, roof newly tiled with translucent quartz, filled with nobles, free folk chieftains, maesters, children of forest, even a quiet cluster of white walkers, former thralls now freed souls under Dawn's gift. Bran officiated, voice echoing through stone and leaf overhead. Jon Stark wed Queen Margaery of Highgarden under boughs of Olden 7. Their vows simple. Stand shield, grow garden, hold memory. When they kissed, petals carved of dragonglass drifted from secret pockets. Bran had carved in weirwood blossoms overhead, each one catching sunlight and fracturing it into rainbows across faces. Feast followed 7 days. Dornish oranges floated in warm cognac. Wildling butchers roasted mammoth haunch. Lannister gold paid minstrels. Even Cersei, now secluded in silent sister's penitence. Robb toasted fallen. Daenerys toasted forged future. Tyrion toasted good wine. Giants recited epic poetry. Dragons swooped low across evening for fireworks aflame. On 8th dawn, Jon and Margaery slipped from castle, through dew-silvered godswood, to small clearing by hot spring. Steam curled. Sunlight pierced trunks. They spoke of future. Children playing with direwolf pups. A northern university where Sam might instruct maesters on Valyrian metallurgy. A festival each dawn day to remember living and dead. They pledged to nurture each. Cicadas chirred though autumn. Ghost dozed. Roses in her hair glistened. Jon rolled a smooth stone between palms. Moonstone from stepstones Arya had gifted, carved with twin sigils. He set it atop a cairn of smaller stones. For those still wandering, he murmured. Far in west sky a comet flared, a final ember of the fallen star once prophesied to herald doom, yet now, simply marking season of harvest. Bran later said, comets come and go. It is choices that bend centuries. Choices had forged a dawn empire, realms cross-knotted like rose vines around iron trellis, each unique, each stronger for union. Wolves still howled, roses still bloomed, dragons still burned bright. But the world did not tremble. It breathed. And so, though scribes would record countless later squabbles, merchant feuds, tempest-lost fleets, cults raised, hearts broken, the people of Westeros would look back on that second autumn of dawn reckoning and say, here was peace. Here was plenty. Here was the hour we learned winter can be survived and even made beautiful, if only we grasp each other's hands and refuse to let go. Then, long centuries hence, travelers would stand beneath the fused stone gates of Dawnhold. Once Harrenhal, now shining white and green, and read etched upon arch words chosen by Sansa, carved by Gendry, approved by queens and kings and free folk together. From ice, memory. From fire, mercy. From dawn, forever. Nanda Wanti. They would walk those halls and feel warmth. They would hear stories of direwolves chasing summer butterflies and of roses budding red through late snows. They would know that empire is not forged by tyranny, but by the simple courage to love amidst fear. And somewhere, perhaps beyond hearing, wolves would howl welcome. The realm endured.